What if the world we know is only the surface, just a thin veil stretched over a far deeper past? Beneath layers of dust and silence lie enigmas so profound they defy every law we thought we understood. Gigantic stone structures aligned with the stars, carved with a precision that modern tools struggle to match. Artifacts that shouldn't exist. Timelines that fracture under scrutiny. Who built them? Why? And what knowledge did they hold or hide? Across deserts, buried in jungles, and drowned beneath oceans, ancient voices whisper through ruins and relics. We dig, we measure, we speculate. But some truths refuse to be unearthed. They linger in the shadows of history, taunting us with possibilities, civilizations lost before our own began, technologies forgotten by time, beliefs etched into stone but erased from memory. These are not myths. These are the unanswered questions etched into the bones of the earth. So sit back, relax, and let's dive deep into the greatest ancient mysteries science still can't explain. The journey begins now. Amid the soft winds of the Sonoran Desert, where the sun casts long shadows over scrubland and stone, there is a silence that feels older than time itself. Cacti stand like sentinels, mountains rise like broken teeth from the earth, and in the spaces between, dry riverbeds, ancient trails, forgotten petroglyphs, echoes of a vanished world still seem to stir. It is here, or somewhere not far from here, that some believe the journey of the Mexica people began. A journey from a place they called Aztlan, the legendary ancestral homeland of the Aztecs. Described in later Aztec codices as a paradise of 7 caves, lush with water and fertile with life, Aztlan was said to be a land of abundance, a sacred place where tribes flourished before being called southward by divine command. Their migration, guided by omens and celestial signs, would ultimately lead them to the Valley of Mexico. There, in the shadow of volcanoes, they would build an empire. But they never forgot Aztlan. It remained etched into their mythology, their memory, and their map of the cosmos. But where was it? Some believe Aztlan was purely symbolic, a metaphor for spiritual emergence, a creation myth cloaked in allegory. Others argue it was real, a tangible city or region, now lost to time, perhaps swallowed by changing climate, buried beneath desert sands, or submerged in the flood of colonial erasure. Early Spanish chroniclers recorded the Aztec legends with a mix of fascination and confusion. Bernardino de Sahagún and Diego Duran transcribed the oral traditions of indigenous informants, painting vivid portraits of this mythical origin point far to the north. But they offered no precise coordinates, no definitive landmarks, only hints: mountains, water, caves, a lake island, clues wrapped in centuries of migration and myth-making. So, where did Aztlan once stand? Some scholars have speculated that it lay somewhere in modern-day northwestern Mexico, perhaps in Nayarit or Sinaloa, regions rich in history, but poorly documented in the pre-Columbian era. Others have looked farther north, deep into what is now the southwestern United States, the Hopi Mesas of Arizona, the cliff dwellings of New Mexico, the vast, stark beauty of Utah's canyonlands. These regions were all home to ancient and sophisticated cultures: the Hohokam, the ancestral Puebloans, the Mogollon, whose cities and irrigation systems suggest a long legacy of complex life in the region. Could the Aztecs have once belonged to, or emerged from, these now lost civilizations? More speculative theories push even farther, claiming that Aztlan might lie near the Great Salt Lake of Utah, or perhaps in the submerged canyons beneath the Colorado River Delta. Some fringe researchers, drawing on linguistic connections and archaeological anomalies, have even linked it to lost continents, mysterious cataclysms, or pre-Columbian contact with other continents. These ideas, while lacking solid evidence, reflect the magnetic pull the legend still holds. And then, there is the curious fact that Aslan sounds so much like Atlantis. Two mythic homelands, two tales of a lost paradise, two great civilizations said to have emerged from a place now hidden, forgotten, or destroyed. Is the similarity coincidental? Or is it part of a deeper pattern, a shared human longing to trace our roots back to some golden beginning, now unreachable? In 1821, as Mexico declared its independence from Spain, the image of Aslan surged once more into national consciousness. It became a powerful symbol, not only of heritage, but of unity and sovereignty. In the 20th century, during the Chicano movement in the United States, Aslan was revived again, this time as a symbol of cultural pride, ancestral belonging, and the enduring link between indigenous identity and land. But while the myth grew stronger, the geography remained elusive. No ruins have been conclusively identified as belonging to Aslan. No inscriptions name it directly. Archaeological sites across the north hint at possibilities: abandoned pueblos, ceremonial centers, forgotten trade routes, but none offer certainty. The 7 caves of the legend, sometimes interpreted as tribal clans or sacred wombs, have not been found in any literal form. They remain metaphorical shadows, elusive and evocative. And yet, isn't that precisely what gives the mystery its power? Aslan persists, not because it is fully known, but because it isn't. It exists on the borderlands of memory and myth, between what we can map and what we can only imagine. Every desert horizon might hide a piece of it. Every shard of pottery, every buried wall, every whispered legend passed down through generations might be another breadcrumb on the trail home. Was Aslan a real place, now lost beneath centuries of silence? Or was it always meant to be a kind of compass, not pointing to a destination, but to an identity? Somewhere, perhaps under sand, stone, or story, the answer still waits, hidden, unspoken, and maybe, just maybe, waiting to be rediscovered. Just beyond the mesas of western New Mexico, where the desert air grows still and red cliffs rise like ancient sentinels against the sky, lies the quiet homeland of the Zuni people. Nestled among arid plateaus and wind-swept rock formations, this remote region feels suspended in time. The land itself seems to speak in echoes of old voices, of stories passed down from generation to generation, stories that begin not on Earth, but far above it. Among the Zuni, there is a story that predates European contact, that threads through their ceremonies, their cosmology, and their oral history. It is the tale of the Ashiwi and the Kianokwe, the Sky People. According to the Zuni, their ancestors did not simply emerge from the soil or arrive from a distant land across the sea. They were brought here from the heavens. In sacred origin stories, the Zuni describe beings who descended from the sky, sometimes called Kianokwe, who came to Earth to guide and teach. These visitors were not gods in the sense understood by Western religion, but powerful, luminous entities, guardians of balance and order. They came, the stories say, when the world was still young and unfinished. The people had emerged from previous worlds, 4 in total, each destroyed and renewed, as part of a cosmic cycle. In the 5th and current world, the Zuni were scattered and lost. It was the Sky People who showed them where to settle, how to build, how to live in harmony with the land and the stars. Strikingly, the Zuni are not alone in these celestial accounts. Many indigenous peoples of the American Southwest, including the Hopi and the Navajo, speak of sky beings, star ancestors, or kachinas, spirit messengers who come down from the clouds or ride beams of light. The consistency across tribes, separated by language and culture, has prompted some researchers to ask, are these merely metaphors, or do they record some deeper, forgotten history? From a historical standpoint, The Zuni have occupied the region for over 1,000 years. Their pueblo at Zuni has stood since at least the 13th century AD, and their culture is rooted in agriculture, astronomy, and ceremonial cycles, deeply attuned to seasonal shifts. Their myths encode knowledge of the solstices and the stars. Petroglyphs carved into the stone across the southwest depict spirals, humanoid figures with radiating lines, and what some interpret as celestial diagrams. Mainstream archaeology generally interprets these as expressions of spiritual or cosmological belief, symbolic systems embedded in ritual. The sky beings are often understood as spiritual archetypes, part of a rich metaphorical language describing the forces of nature, the heavens, and ancestral guidance. These interpretations view the legends as sacred allegory, not literal visitation. And yet, the mystery deepens when one considers some of the more unusual aspects of the Zuni language and genetics. Linguists have long noted that Zuni is a language isolate. It is not closely related to any neighboring language families in the region. Some speculate that this points to a unique origin, a cultural lineage that split off long ago from unknown roots. Even more puzzling are certain genetic markers found in the Zuni people. Markers that, while primarily of Native American ancestry, show a small but curious affinity with some Japanese and Polynesian lineages. This has fueled fringe theories of ancient transoceanic contact, or even something more extraordinary. Then, there are the ceremonies. In Zuni rituals, dancers don masks and costumes that resemble exaggerated humanoid forms, beings with large eyes, elongated heads, or strange radiating features. These are sacred performances, not meant to represent aliens in the modern science fiction sense, but beings from the upper worlds. Yet, to outside observers, the resemblance has not gone unnoticed. Some have drawn parallels between these ceremonial figures and modern accounts of so-called extraterrestrial beings. Large eyes, slender forms, a focus on the sky. Theories proliferate on late-night radio, in fringe literature, and online, suggesting that ancient cultures had contact with otherworldly visitors and that these encounters were mythologized over time. The sky people, in this view, were not spirits, but something physical, perhaps even interstellar. Of course, there is no concrete evidence to support this. No artifacts, no technology. Just stories, carvings, patterns, and a sense of something vast lingering behind the veil of what we know. Most scholars remain cautious, preferring explanations rooted in anthropology, mythology, and symbolism. Still, the Zuni themselves treat these traditions not as fantasy, but as truth passed down through time. Their cosmology is not concerned with proving or disproving, but with remembering, honoring, preserving balance between the worlds above and the world below. Could there be a deeper layer to these stories, one that science has not yet uncovered? Or are we simply projecting our own questions onto a worldview that does not separate the physical from the spiritual, as we do? In the silence of the Zuni mesas, where the night sky blooms with countless stars and the Milky Way cuts a bright scar across the darkness, it's easy to wonder, who were the sky people? Where did they come from? And why do their stories still echo so strongly after all these centuries? Perhaps the mystery isn't only in the past. Perhaps it's still unfolding. And perhaps, like the Zuni believe, some truths are meant to be remembered, not explained. Beneath the quiet streets of Paula, Malta, hidden away from the golden Mediterranean sun, lies a labyrinth carved from living stone. Narrow passageways curve into shadow, chambers open into darkness, and the air is thick with stillness, like a breath held for thousands of years. This is the hypogeum of Hal Saflieni, a subterranean monument unlike anything else on Earth. It is ancient, it is enigmatic, and it speaks in whispers, quite literally. Discovered by accident in 1902 during construction work, the hypogeum is an underground temple complex believed to date back to around 4000 BC. That makes it older than the pyramids of Giza, older than Stonehenge. It is thought to have served both as a sanctuary and a necropolis, housing the remains of over 7,000 individuals. But what sets the hypogeum apart isn't just its age or its purpose, it is its voice. Within one of its chambers, the so-called oracle room, a man's voice, when spoken at specific frequencies, resonates through the stone walls with extraordinary power. A single word can echo with such depth that it feels as though it comes from within the listener, vibrating bones and organs, stirring something ancient and primal. Acousticians have measured the effect and found that sound in this chamber is amplified and sustained in a way that modern architects would struggle to replicate, even with digital modeling. And yet, this was created by a Neolithic civilization, with no metal tools, no written language, no known system of mathematics. How did they do it? The oracle room is shaped like a curved oval cavity, roughly hewn yet eerily precise in its acoustics. Studies have shown that its optimal resonant frequency, between 95 and 120 Hz, corresponds to the range of the male human voice. When chanting or intoning within that range, the entire complex seems to come alive. The walls hum, the chambers respond. Visitors report altered states of awareness, sensations of dizziness or clarity, and even mild hallucinations. Some feel as though the sound comes not to their ears, but directly to their consciousness. Was this deliberate? Did the builders of the hypogeum understand acoustics to such a degree? Or did they stumble upon the effect by chance and recognize its spiritual power? Mainstream archaeologists acknowledge the acoustic properties as extraordinary, but tend to frame them within cultural and ritual use. Sound, after all, has long been a tool for inducing trance states, guiding initiations, or marking sacred transitions. The hypogeum may have been designed for ceremony, the amplification of voice serving to enhance ritual drama or connect worshippers to the divine. But the precision of the effect continues to puzzle researchers. How could a pre-literate society shape stone with such fine acoustic properties without any apparent trial and error? There are no other known structures from this era in Malta, or anywhere else, that exhibit quite the same phenomenon. It is as though this knowledge appeared fully formed, used once to create a single masterpiece, and then disappeared. Some fringe theorists suggest the knowledge may have come from elsewhere, perhaps from an earlier, lost civilization, whose understanding of sound and vibration exceeded even our own. Others speculate more wildly. Was sound once used as a tool, not just for ceremony, but for healing, for communication, for construction? Ancient myths across the world often speak of sound as a creative force. In Hindu cosmology, the universe begins with Om, a primordial vibration. In Egyptian lore, the god Thoth speaks the world into being. Could the builders of the hypogeum have shared in a forgotten, global understanding of vibrational resonance? There are even those who whisper about extraterrestrial influence, pointing to the uncanny precision of the acoustics as evidence that human hands did not work alone. These theories remain speculative at best, but they persist, fueled by the lingering mystery of how such an effect could be engineered without the tools of modern science. Adding another layer to the enigma is the absence of any definitive record of the people who built it. The culture responsible for the hypogeum vanished by around 2500 BC, long before written language emerged in the region. What we know comes only from the stones they left behind and the remains they buried within them. Dozens of small statuettes have been found in the hypogeum, some serene, some strange. The most famous is the Sleeping Lady, a rotund figure in repose, curled upon her side, atop what appears to be a stone bench or bed. She is peaceful, still, But those who study her have often asked, is she dreaming? Or has she already crossed into another world? The hypogeum, too, seems suspended between worlds. A temple, a tomb, a place of transition, a gateway between the living and the dead. The acoustic resonance, felt not just in the ear, but in the body, may have been a way of tuning human consciousness, opening a kind of inner portal. As we walk through its echoing halls today, protected by preservation measures and guided in low light, we can still feel that hum. It is not loud, but it is deep, subtle, ancient. The kind of sound that seems to come from the stone itself, or perhaps from something behind the stone. What knowledge was lost when the builders disappeared? What intention lay behind those carefully carved walls? And what other frequencies of sound, of mind, of spirit have yet to be discovered, still waiting in the dark beneath our feet? In a museum in Istanbul, behind a pane of protective glass, sits a narrow weathered clay tablet. Its surface is etched with neat lines of cuneiform script, the earliest form of writing known to humanity. This is not a poem, nor a religious hymn, nor a merchant's account. It is a list of kings, a list of reigns, a list that begins not with the rise of civilization, but with a flood, and with rulers who reigned not for decades, but for thousands of years. It is known as the Sumerian King List. Written over 4,000 years ago and copied and recopied by scribes for generations, versions of this list have been found across Mesopotamia, on stone stelae, clay tablets, and broken fragments. Most scholars believe the list was compiled in the early 2nd millennium BC, in the city of Isin, though some of the kings and cities it names stretch back far earlier, into what the Sumerians themselves considered the dawn of time. At first glance, the document seems historical, a royal chronicle of city-states like Eridu, Uruk, Kish, and Lagash, recording the succession of kings and the movement of power. But something about the list quickly defies logic. In the earliest sections, before the Great Flood, the kings are said to have ruled for impossibly long durations. One king reigned for 28,800 years, another for 36,000. The list names 8 antediluvian kings who, combined, ruled for over 240,000 years. Then, the flood came. After the flood, the reigns become shorter, though still unusually long by modern standards. Eventually, they descend into more plausible timelines, with reigns of a few decades. And the names begin to align with known archaeological and historical figures. Gilgamesh, the legendary hero of the Mesopotamian epic, appears on the list as a king of Uruk. His reign, notably, is recorded at 126 years. What do we make of these extraordinary durations? Mainstream scholars interpret the list as a blend of myth and history, a political document meant to legitimize certain dynasties by tying them to divine origins. In this view, the lengthy reigns of the antediluvian kings reflect not literal years, but symbolic grandeur. Numbers like 36,000 were perhaps not meant to be understood as calendar years, but as markers of cosmic cycles, spiritual authority, or allegorical significance. Sumerian culture was steeped in numerology and cosmology. The number 60, for instance, held divine importance in their sexagesimal system. Might these immense figures, 28,800 years, 36,000 years, have been code for something else? A metaphysical epoch, a celestial rhythm, a lost system of timekeeping now beyond our grasp. And yet, others ask whether the list hints at a forgotten truth. Could there have been an era, long before recorded history, when knowledge, power, or even life itself followed rules we no longer understand? Were these kings not men in the ordinary sense, but something else? In some interpretations, they are seen as god-kings, semi-divine beings who bridge the human and the divine. Much like the Nephilim of biblical lore, or the rulers of Atlantis in Plato's account. The parallels are difficult to ignore. In both Mesopotamian and biblical tradition, there is a flood, sent by divine will, that marks a dramatic break in human history. Before the flood, lifespans are vast. After, they dwindle. The antediluvian period becomes a kind of mythical twilight, where giants walked the earth and time flowed differently. Some fringe theorists have taken the list as evidence of lost civilizations, technologically advanced societies that predate our known history. According to these ideas, the long-reigning kings may have belonged to a pre-flood world with forgotten sciences, possibly extraterrestrial influence, or at the very least, a dramatically different understanding of biology and time. Others point to the curious consistency across different versions of the list. While the names and figures vary slightly, the structure remains intact. Long reigns, a flood, shorter reigns. Could this be more than literary convention? Might it encode memory, dimly remembered and ritualistically preserved, of a real and radically different past? The king list also raises questions about how we define history. Where does myth end and history begin? When an ancient culture writes of events 100,000 years ago, do we dismiss it outright, or do we ask, what inspired such a claim? In the absence of written records, oral memory carries the weight of generations. Could this be a fossil of collective memory, distorted, ritualized, but rooted in something real? It is also worth asking why such a list was created at all. What purpose did it serve? Power, perhaps. Legitimacy. To claim a divine ancestry was to claim the right to rule. But the tone of the list is not merely political. It feels ceremonial, almost reverent. As if those who inscribed it did not merely record the past, they invoked it. And so, the Sumerian king list remains one of the strangest documents of antiquity. Part history, part myth, part enigma. It invites us to consider the possibility that the human story may be far older and far more layered than we assume. Who were these kings that ruled before the flood? What kind of world did they inhabit? And why, after so many thousands of years, does their legacy still echo in the clay? The answers may lie buried beneath the ruins of Sumer. Or perhaps, they lie deeper still, beneath our assumptions of what history truly is. High in the Bekaa Valley of Lebanon, where the mountains cast long shadows across sun-drenched ruins, the remains of one of antiquity's greatest architectural marvels still defy the passage of time. Amid broken columns and shattered cornices, a structure once dedicated to the Roman god Jupiter towers in silence, its foundations unlike anything else built in the classical world. This is the Temple of Jupiter in Baalbek, a sanctuary of awe and grandeur. And beneath it lie stones so large, so impossibly heavy, that even today their origin remains a mystery. The temple itself, now partly ruined, was once the largest in the Roman Empire. Its columns, 19 meters tall, were among the highest ever erected in the ancient world. But it is not the height of the columns, nor the intricacy of the Corinthian capitals, that captures the imagination of scholars and visitors alike. It is the base, the platform upon which this temple was raised. Embedded within the substructure are 3 megalithic stones, known collectively as the Trilithon. Each of these stones measures roughly 20 meters in length and weighs an estimated 800 to 1,000 tons. For perspective, that is more than the weight of a fully loaded Boeing 747. And yet, these stones were not merely moved. They were precisely placed side by side atop already existing courses of masonry. Above them, other massive stones were stacked, forming a stable, aligned foundation for the temple that once stood above. How, in an era without powered machinery, were these colossal stones transported from the nearby quarry and lifted into place. The quarry itself, located just a short distance from the main site, still contains additional massive stones, one of them even larger than those used in the temple's foundation. Known as the Stone of the Pregnant Woman, this unfinished block weighs over 1,000 tons. It lies partially detached, as if awaiting a feat of engineering that never came. In recent years, archaeologists discovered yet another megalith beneath it, suggesting a continuing tradition of megalithic experimentation. Mainstream scholars attribute the construction of the Temple of Jupiter to Roman engineers in the 1st century AD, during the reigns of Augustus and later emperors. The site itself, however, has a far older history. Long before the Romans arrived, Baalbek, then known as Heliopolis, was sacred ground. The Phoenicians had worshipped here, and before them, perhaps even older civilizations left their mark. Could the Romans have inherited more than just a location? Could the platform upon which they built have belonged to a much earlier culture, one with knowledge or capabilities we no longer understand? Some researchers suggest the Roman construction was built on top of a pre-existing foundation that predates known history. The precision of the stonework, the sheer scale of the trilithon, and the lack of clear tool marks have led to speculation. No known Roman writings mention how the stones were moved. There are no detailed engineering records, no preserved accounts of the methods used. Was it brute force, ramps, pulleys, hundreds of laborers and ingenious lever systems? Some engineers believe it is theoretically possible using ancient technology, but others remain skeptical. Moving a 1,000-ton stone without fracturing it across uneven terrain and then lifting it several meters into place would have been an extraordinary undertaking, even by today's standards. Then, there are the more speculative theories. Some point to lost technologies, advanced methods of stone manipulation, forgotten engineering principles, or even the use of sound or vibration to reduce the effective weight of the stones. Others propose connections to a prehistoric master civilization, one responsible for other megalithic feats across the world, from Egypt to Peru. The idea of a once unified global knowledge system, scattered and lost over millennia, continues to attract fringe theorists and alternative historians alike. A few go further still, suggesting help from beyond the Earth itself. The precise placement, massive scale, and apparent lack of conventional tools have drawn the attention of ancient astronaut theorists, who posit that extraterrestrial visitors may have had a hand in Baalbek's construction. These ideas, though lacking material evidence, persist in popular imagination, driven by the enduring enigma of the stones themselves. Yet, amidst the speculation, the temple remains grounded in human history. It was a place of worship, of imperial power, of cultural synthesis. Roman, Greek, Phoenician, and even earlier traditions converge here. And still, the stones whisper questions to those who pass among them. Why build so massive, so precisely? Why choose stones too large for ease, when smaller blocks would have sufficed? Was it to impress the gods? To claim dominion over nature? Or to anchor a temple into the very bones of the earth, ensuring it would never be moved? Perhaps the mystery lies not only in how the stones were moved, but in why. Today, as the sun casts long shadows across the cracked floor of the temple, and as birds circle the silent columns, the trilithon stones remain as they have for thousands of years, silent, immovable, waiting. Were they part of a technology we've forgotten? A ritual we no longer understand? Or are they simply the remnants of ambition? Human will, multiplied by ingenuity, etched forever in stone. Whatever their purpose, the foundation stones of Baalbek refuse to yield all their secrets. They remain as both monument and riddle, inviting us to look closer, to think deeper, and to wonder. What else lies buried beneath the temples of time? As the first rays of sunlight stretch across the Giza plateau, the silhouette of a timeless sentinel begins to emerge from the shifting desert haze. Carved from limestone and weathered by millennia, the Great Sphinx rises out of the bedrock with an air of ancient silence. Its gaze is fixed eternally eastward, as if watching the sun return each morning from some distant memory. Part lion, part man, the monument is as iconic as the pyramids behind it, yet shrouded in far more ambiguity. For generations, scholars have attributed the Sphinx to Pharaoh Khafre, dating it to approximately 2500 BC. This attribution, drawn largely from proximity and stylistic comparisons, places the statue squarely within Egypt's 4th dynasty. But over the past few decades, a quiet yet persistent debate has unsettled that chronology, one rooted not in hieroglyphs or dynastic lists, but in geology. Look closely, not at the face or the paws of the Sphinx, but at the walls of the enclosure in which it sits. There, in the limestone cliffs surrounding the monument, are patterns of deep vertical fissures, rounded profiles, and undulating contours. To the untrained eye, these may seem like little more than the slow handiwork of time. But to some geologists, these marks speak not of desert winds, but of rainfall. It is the cornerstone of the Sphinx water erosion hypothesis, first proposed in the early 1990s by geologist Dr. Robert Schoch of Boston University. After studying the site firsthand, Schoch concluded that the nature of the erosion on the Sphinx enclosure suggests prolonged exposure to heavy, sustained rainfall, erosion patterns consistent with water wearing down soft limestone over centuries. But therein lies the riddle. The Giza Plateau has not experienced such rainfall in over 5,000 years. The last time this region saw significant precipitation was during the transition out of the last ice age, around 7,000 to 10,000 BC. If the erosion was indeed caused by rain, then the base of the Sphinx must predate the accepted construction date by thousands of years, perhaps placing it in an era before the rise of dynastic Egypt, before the pyramids, before recorded history. This suggestion immediately places the hypothesis at odds with traditional Egyptology, which ties the Sphinx to Khafre based on the architectural layout of the pyramid complex, the alignment of causeways, and stylistic elements that appear to echo the face of the pharaoh in nearby statues. There is no inscription directly attributing the Sphinx to Khafre, but the circumstantial evidence has long been considered sufficient. Egyptologists argue that other forms of erosion, salt crystallization, groundwater movement, and wind abrasion, could have contributed to the weathering patterns seen today. They point to other structures nearby that exhibit similar surface wear, and caution that ancient monuments endure a multitude of environmental factors over time. Still, the water erosion patterns remain difficult to dismiss. If Schoch's analysis holds, then the Sphinx may not only be older than Khafre, it may be older than Egypt itself. It raises questions that ripple outward. Who, then, carved the Sphinx? And for what purpose? Some researchers speculate that the monument was not originally a sphinx at all. Its body, far larger than its head, has led many to believe that it was recarved from a pre-existing statue, possibly a lion, symbolizing power, or perhaps the constellation Leo. If so, was the recarving done by the ancient Egyptians, transforming an older monument into something that reflected their own worldview? Or was the original monument part of a forgotten culture, one that thrived during a greener, wetter epoch in the Sahara? This opens the door to more fringe but intriguing possibilities. Could the Sphinx be a relic of a lost civilization, one predating the known arc of human development? Similar theories emerge around megalithic sites across the world. Baalbek, Göbekli Tepe, Puma Punku. Are these scattered remnants of a global culture lost to time? Or is the pattern merely a mirage, born from the human tendency to seek connections in the unknown? Some, invoking ancient texts and unconfirmed reports of subterranean anomalies, believe there may be hidden chambers beneath the Sphinx. In the 1990s, ground-penetrating radar surveys detected potential voids under the monument, particularly between its paws. Speculations followed. Could there be a chamber containing records or artifacts from a forgotten age? The so-called Hall of Records, as described by mystics like Edgar Cayce. Egypt's Supreme Council of Antiquities has denied any such chamber exists, or at least that any exploration has confirmed it. So the mystery endures. The Sphinx remains mute. Its body continues to erode. Its expression, part dignity, part detachment, remains unchanged. Archaeologists continue to uphold the traditional timeline. Geologists continue to raise questions. And beneath the arguments lies something deeper. A sense that this monument, older than we know, may be connected to a chapter of human history that is not yet fully written. Could the Sphinx be a messenger from an age lost to sand and time? Or are we misreading its silence, interpreting erosion as revelation, myth as memory? We may never know for certain. But as the sun rises once again behind the ancient monument, casting its first light across the limestone face, it's hard not to feel that some part of the truth still lingers there, half buried, half revealed, just waiting to be understood. Amid the sprawling ruins of Teotihuacan, northeast of modern-day Mexico City, a temple rises from the ancient Avenue of the Dead with the quiet authority of forgotten greatness. The Temple of the Feathered Serpent, also known as the Temple of Quetzalcoatl, bears the carved heads of plumed serpents and snarling jaguars staring out from its tiered stone facade. Its symmetry is precise, its artistry striking, but it is what lies beneath that has stirred the deepest questions. This was once one of the most important ceremonial centers in Mesoamerica, part of a city that, at its peak, was home to more than 100,000 people. Teotihuacan's wide boulevards, stepped pyramids, and intricate urban grid reflect a level of planning that rivals many ancient capitals. And yet, the culture that built it remains anonymous. We do not know what they called themselves. Their language, their rulers, and their myths are lost. Even the Aztecs, arriving centuries later, could only refer to the city as the place where the gods were created. For centuries, the Temple of the Feathered Serpent stood in dignified ruin, hiding its secrets beneath stone and soil. Then, in 2003, an unexpected discovery shifted the focus underground. Heavy rains had caused a sinkhole to open in front of the temple steps. Archaeologists investigating the depression uncovered the entrance to a sealed tunnel, one that had lain hidden for nearly 1,800 years. Descending into darkness, they entered a subterranean world unlike anything seen before in Mesoamerica. The tunnel stretched nearly 100 meters beneath the temple, carefully constructed with stone walls and lined with mysterious substances. Spheres of clay coated in pyrite glinted in the light, casting a golden glow like stars against the earthen backdrop. Traces of mica, a mineral known for its reflective properties, were found on walls and artifacts. And deeper still, in the innermost chamber, researchers discovered something even more astonishing: pools and droplets of liquid mercury. In the ancient world, mercury was a rare and dangerous substance. Shimmering like quicksilver, it flows with the smoothness of water, but carries the weight of poison. Its presence in the tunnel sparked immediate questions. Mercury was not mined in the immediate region. Its procurement and transport would have required deliberate effort. So, why was it brought here? And why hidden so far beneath the earth? Some archaeologists propose that the tunnel served as a symbolic underworld, a place of ritual passage, death, and rebirth. In Mesoamerican cosmology, the world was often seen in vertical layers: the heavens above, the mortal plane in the center, and the underworld below. The shimmering mercury, they suggest, may have represented rivers or lakes of the underworld, a reflective surface meant to guide souls or gods through sacred rites. But others are not so sure. Could the mercury have served a more practical or even technological function? Ancient texts from other parts of the world describe mercury in association with powerful energies or transformation. In India, it appears in alchemical writings as a sacred metal. In China, it was believed to preserve life and was used in the tomb of the first emperor, Qin Shi Huang, whose burial chamber is rumored to contain rivers of flowing mercury. Could Teotihuacan have been home to similar beliefs? The chamber's architecture adds to the intrigue. The tunnel appears designed not only for access, but for experience. The golden spheres, the echoing space, the subtle humidity, the dim flicker of light, all seem engineered to evoke awe, or perhaps something more. Was this a space meant to simulate the journey to the divine? Or was it meant to contain something, or someone? No human remains were found within the deepest part of the tunnel. No tomb, no bones, no sarcophagus. But fragments of jade, seashells, rubber balls, and obsidian blades were uncovered, each object rich with symbolic significance in the Mesoamerican worldview. Some believe the tunnel was a royal tomb long since looted. Others suggest it was never meant for burial, but for initiation, for transformation. More speculative theories abound. Some suggest the mercury may have been used to power unknown technologies, claims not supported by archaeological consensus, but which linger in the imagination. Could the builders of Teotihuacan have harnessed properties of mercury we do not fully understand today? Might the mineral have served an esoteric or energetic purpose long forgotten? And who were these builders, truly? Teotihuacan rose and fell before the rise of the Aztecs. It existed in silence before being rediscovered. Its art and layout suggest cultural links to the Zapotec, the Maya, and other Mesoamerican peoples. But its core identity remains elusive. No king's name survives, no definitive script, only symbols, alignments, and the ruins of sacred geometry. The Temple of the Feathered Serpent was at the heart of this mystery, and the tunnel beneath it has only deepened the enigma. Why bury mercury under a temple of the sky god? Why construct such a tunnel only to seal it off with rubble? What beliefs, what fears, what hopes compelled this immense effort to shape the earth? As archaeologists continue to study the findings, the silence of the tunnel endures. It speaks only in fragments, shimmering metal, ancient dust, and sacred geometry. A place once hidden, now opened, but not yet understood. What lies beneath Teotihuacan may not be another tomb, nor a treasure, but something more difficult to uncover. A forgotten vision of the cosmos, locked in stone and quicksilver, waiting for the questions that have yet to be asked. High in the mist-covered hills of West Java, Indonesia, a strange and silent sight stands alone against the thick jungle canopy. Rising over the lush green landscape is Gunung Padang, Mountain of Light, a megalithic complex long revered by locals and quietly watched over by time itself. To a casual observer, it appears to be little more than a hill crowned by scattered stone terraces. But beneath its moss-covered basalt columns, researchers have uncovered a structure that could rewrite everything we know about the ancient world. At first glance, Mount Padang does not resemble the grand stone cities of Egypt or the immense temples of Mesoamerica. It lacks ornate carvings or towering pillars. Instead, it is made up of hundreds of massive andesite blocks, natural hexagonal stones arranged in ordered patterns, forming terraces and platforms on the summit. For decades, this site was dated to around 500 BC, based on surface artifacts. But beneath the upper layers, the hill hides something far older and far stranger. In recent years, Ground-penetrating radar, core sampling, and seismic tomography have revealed multiple layers of construction, stretching deep below the surface. Indonesian geologist Dr. Danny Hillman Natawidjaja led the team that made a startling announcement. The site may not be a simple megalithic complex. It may be a massive, man-made pyramid-like structure with layers of human modification potentially dating back to 10,000 BC or earlier. If true, this would make Mount Padang the oldest known pyramid-like structure in the world, predating Göbekli Tepe, the pyramids of Egypt, and even the beginning of agriculture in the Fertile Crescent. The idea is controversial. Mainstream archaeologists caution that the dating methods are not yet definitive. Organic material found in drill samples may not conclusively indicate the age of the structure itself. Some argue that the lower layers are natural geological formations, shaped by volcanic processes and only superficially altered by humans. Others suggest the site was used and modified repeatedly over thousands of years, making its true origin difficult to determine. Still, the evidence is compelling. The structure's alignment appears intentional. Some stones weigh several tons and are stacked with precision. Channels beneath the surface suggest chambers, voids, and passageways, parts of which have yet to be explored. Certain areas produce unusually high magnetic readings, hinting at materials or features still hidden deep within the earth. And then there are the legends. Local Sundanese lore speaks of an ancient kingdom with advanced knowledge, destroyed by cataclysm and buried by time. The name Gunung Padang itself means Mountain of Enlightenment, a title that suggests spiritual or symbolic significance. For generations, the site was considered sacred ground, used for meditation and ceremony. Could the myths be faint echoes of a forgotten civilization, preserved in oral tradition long after its fall? Some researchers have drawn comparisons between Mount Padang and other megalithic mysteries around the world, like the platform stones at Baalbek or the submerged ruins off the coast of Yonaguni. The site suggests a level of planning and purpose inconsistent with what we expect from hunter-gatherer societies. If construction truly began over 12,000 years ago, at the end of the last ice age, then who were the builders? What tools did they use? And why choose this place? More speculative theories abound. Some propose that Mount Padang was part of a vast pre-Ice Age civilization, now lost beneath rising seas and shifting lands. Others claim the site may have functioned as an ancient observatory, or even an energy center aligned with magnetic ley lines. Still others suggest the hill was once a resonance structure, a concept echoed in theories about the acoustic properties of sacred spaces, like the Hypogeum of Malta. Yet no inscriptions have been found, no clear evidence of writing, no artifacts that point decisively to a known culture. The mountain remains silent, its secrets buried deep beneath stone and earth. Excavations have been slow and often halted due to bureaucratic, religious, and political tensions. The implications of the site challenge not only historical timelines, but national narratives, and even the boundaries between science and belief. Is Mount Padang truly the oldest known structure ever built by human hands? Or are we misreading the natural architecture of the land? Are we on the brink of uncovering an ancient chapter of human history long forgotten? Or reaching too far into the shadows of uncertainty? As the fog settles once again over the terraces and the jungle sings its evening song, the stones remain unmoved, watching, waiting. Beneath them may lie a story that stretches back not just thousands, but tens of thousands of years. A story that could reshape our understanding of civilization itself. What did the people of Mount Padang know? What vision led them to shape a mountain? And what, still entombed beneath the soil and the silence, waits to be revealed? Far out in the western Pacific, beyond coral reefs and thick mangrove roots, lies a place where the sea itself seems to cradle stone. Off the coast of Pohnpei, one of the islands of Micronesia, a network of ancient ruins rises from the tidal waters. Massive basalt columns stacked with uncanny precision, forming walls, canals, and platforms. This is Nan Madol, a city built on the sea, often called the Venice of the Pacific. But unlike Venice, Nan Madol was never touched by the Renaissance, nor charted on medieval maps. It appeared quietly, from origins no one truly understands. The ruins stretch across nearly 100 artificial islets, each built from thousands of prismatic basalt stones, many weighing several tons. These islets are connected by tidal channels, which flow gently between the structures like streets of water. Crumbling towers and looming stone walls still rise above the surf, their purpose long obscured. And as the tide moves in and out, the ruins are caught in a strange rhythm, half claimed by the sea, half resting on it. Archaeologists estimate that Nan Madol was constructed between 1200 and 1600 AD and served as the ceremonial and political seat of the Saudeleur dynasty, a centralized monarchy that once ruled over Pohnpei. Yet for such an ambitious and logistically daunting project, very little is known about its builders or how the city came to be. The construction materials alone, some weighing over 20 tons, would have required extraordinary coordination, if not unknown techniques. The basalt logs that make up Nan Madol's walls were quarried on the opposite side of Pohnpei, then somehow transported across dense jungle and open water to a reef shelf with no natural source of fresh water, food, or even stable ground. The engineering challenge is staggering, even by modern standards. How are these stones moved? By what tools or methods? And more importantly, why build here, upon the sea? Local legend offers a different origin story. It tells of two brothers, Olasopa and Olasipa, sorcerers who came from a distant land and used magic to levitate the stones into place. When they finished building the city, they ruled as high priests and founded the Saudeleur line. Their power was great, but their dynasty eventually fell, overthrown by a foreign warrior named Isokalekal, another figure steeped in myth. While oral histories often mingle legend with memory, they also preserve something that conventional archaeology cannot measure: cultural truth. In the stories of Nan Madol, there is always a sense that the site was not merely constructed for practicality, but for ritual, for separation, for control. The layout of the islet supports this. Certain structures were designated for the elite, others for priests. Some were set aside for food preparation, ritual sacrifices, or burial. The city may have been designed as a kind of sacred enclave, removed from the common people. Its watery isolation, a deliberate barrier between the rulers and the ruled. But why such monumental effort? Why construct a megalithic complex in such an inhospitable and vulnerable place? Mainstream theories suggest that Nan Madol's placement was intended to impress, to impose divine authority. Others believe the sea itself played a role in spiritual cosmology, and that building on water reflected a connection to ancestral realms or underworld beliefs. But as with so many ancient sites, the practical blends with the symbolic, and the line between the two is elusive. Then there are the less conventional ideas. Some researchers have drawn parallels between Nan Madol and other mysterious megalithic sites around the world, suggesting that the city may be a remnant of a lost maritime civilization, one capable of navigating vast distances and sharing architectural knowledge across oceans. The similarity between Nan Madol's basalt pillars and the dolmens, or cyclopean masonry of other ancient cultures, has fueled theories of a prehistoric global culture, advanced, now forgotten. Others take the speculation further still, pointing to anomalies such as magnetic irregularities in the area, unusual alignments, or the city's alignment with lunar cycles. Could Nan Madol have functioned as a kind of astronomical observatory? A ritual calendar encoded in stone and tide? And of course, there are those who connect it to the enduring myth of Lemuria, or Mu, a hypothetical lost continent submerged beneath the Pacific. In this view, Nan Madol is not an outpost, but a surviving fragment, a solitary trace of something vast and sunken. These ideas are not supported by empirical evidence, but their persistence speaks to the atmosphere of the place. Nan Madol feels ancient in a way that resists definition. It is haunting not only because of what remains, but because of what doesn't. No tools, no inscriptions, no written history. Only stone. Only silence. Today, the ruins are largely abandoned, visited occasionally by researchers and more frequently by the curious. The jungle encroaches. Salt air slowly erodes the basalt. Beneath the waves, foundations shift. And still, the city holds its secrets. Why was it built? How were the stones transported and assembled? What cultural memory is encoded in its layout, now fractured by time? As the sun sets over the Pacific, and the waters of the lagoon shimmer in shades of gold and deep blue, Nan Madol becomes more than a ruin. It becomes a question, one carried by the wind, the tide, and the stones themselves. What knowledge was lost with the Sotalura kings? And how much of it still waits, buried beneath the sea, or hidden in the stories passed down through generations, whispering that something extraordinary once stood here, on the water's edge, in a quiet corner of central Russia, tucked away in the archives of Bashkir State University, lies a stone slab that has stirred whispers of a forgotten world. Discovered in 1999 near the small village of Chandar in the Ural Mountains, this object is not gold or jewel-encrusted, not carved with the names of gods or kings. It is a single block of stone, heavy and unassuming, until one looks closer. Etched across its surface are precise grooves and elevated contours that, to some, resemble the winding lines of rivers and mountain ranges. The slab, approximately 5 feet long and 4 feet wide, appears to be a form of topographic map, a three-dimensional representation of terrain. And not just any terrain. According to those who have studied it closely, the features align with an area in the southern Urals, complete with river systems, mountain ridges, and even what some believe are man-made channels or irrigation systems. Its discoverers called it the map of the Creator. At first glance, the stone seems like a geological curiosity. Composed primarily of a dolomite-like material, the slab bears a fine ceramic overlay in which the map is inscribed. The level of detail is extraordinary. Some claim it shows not only natural features, but artificial structures, including a series of channel-like formations, each 500 meters wide and 10 kilometers long. These are not randomly placed lines, but appear deliberate, engineered. Professor Alexander Chuvirov, a physicist who led the early studies of the slab, proposed a stunning idea: that this was not the work of ancient human hands, but a precise geoengineering chart created by a technologically advanced civilization. Based on the complexity of the features, Chuvirov initially estimated the artifact's age to be nearly 120 million years. Such a claim was immediately met with skepticism. Mainstream geologists questioned the methodology, the dating techniques, and the interpretations of the supposed map. How could any intelligent life, let alone a cartographically capable civilization, have existed at a time when dinosaurs still roamed the Earth? There is, of course, no accepted archaeological evidence of such a civilization. Most dismiss the object as a natural formation misinterpreted by overzealous researchers. Still, others were intrigued. If not an impossibly ancient map, then what was it? Could it be a much more recent creation, perhaps medieval or modern, the product of early geological curiosity or artistic expression? Or was it even a forgery, an elaborate hoax engineered for attention. But if it were a hoax, the question remains, to what end? The slab was never widely publicized until long after its discovery. It was not sold. It was not exhibited to profit-seeking ends. It sits, heavy and silent, mostly away from public view, drawing interest only from a handful of researchers and mystery enthusiasts. Adding to the intrigue is the suggestion that the stone is not alone. Early reports by Chuvyarov and his team claimed there were at least 2 other similar slabs in the region, perhaps part of a larger set, a full map once composed of multiple pieces. If true, this raises further questions. What kind of people would construct such an object? What tools would they have used to carve topography into ceramic stone? And why? No inscriptions accompany the slab. No language, no dates, no cultural markers, just terrain, real or imagined. The map-like design, if genuine, may suggest a level of knowledge far beyond what was known or believed possible at any time before the modern era. It might imply not only awareness of geography, but a godlike view from above, an aerial perspective thousands of years before humans ever took to the skies. Could this imply lost technologies? An unknown culture with methods of observation and measurement that defy our current understanding? Or are we projecting meaning where there is none, seeing maps in mountains, channels in cracks, order in coincidence? Some speculative thinkers have gone further still. They suggest the slab may have been part of an extraterrestrial archive, either the work of non-human intelligence or a tool gifted to early humanity. These theories, while lacking supporting evidence, speak to the scale and strangeness of the object. Adding to the intrigue is the suggestion that the stone is not alone. Early reports by Chuvyarov and his team claimed there were at least 2 other similar slabs in the region, perhaps part of a larger set, a full map once composed of multiple pieces. If true, this raises further questions. What kind of people would construct such an object? What tools would they have used to carve topography into ceramic stone? And why? No inscriptions accompany the slab. No language, no dates, no cultural markers, just terrain, real or imagined. The map-like design, if genuine, may suggest a level of knowledge far beyond what was known or believed possible at any time before the modern era. It might imply not only awareness of geography, but a godlike view from above, an aerial perspective thousands of years before humans ever took to the skies. Could this imply lost technologies? An unknown culture with methods of observation and measurement that defy our current understanding? Or are we projecting meaning where there is none, seeing maps in mountains, channels in cracks, or in the quiet village of Tartaria, nestled among the rolling green hills of Transylvania, in modern-day Romania? The soil has kept secrets for millennia. It was here, in 1961, that an archaeologist named Nicolae Vlasa made a startling discovery. 3 small clay tablets buried among the bones of what appeared to be a ritual burial. At first glance, they seemed ordinary, simple slabs no larger than the palm of a hand. But pressed into the surface of these tablets were strange symbols, incised lines, abstract markings, and geometric shapes that would soon ignite a debate still unresolved today. They became known as the Tartaria tablets. What makes these artifacts so provocative is not their age alone. Although radiocarbon dating of organic material found at the site places them as early as 5300 BC. But the possibility that they may represent the world's oldest form of writing. If true, these humble fragments would predate the earliest known Sumerian cuneiform by more than 1,000 years. The markings bear a resemblance to the Vincha symbols, part of a wider cultural expression that flourished in southeastern Europe during the Neolithic period. The Vincha culture, which extended across present-day Serbia, Romania, and parts of the Balkans, was known for its pottery, figurines, and abstract art. But nowhere else are the signs as densely concentrated or as orderly as they are on the Tortoria tablets. Some see in them the beginning of script, systematic and deliberate communication, encoded in clay. But others disagree. Mainstream scholars remain cautious. While the symbols are undeniably deliberate, their meaning is unknown. Some argue that the tablets may not represent writing at all, but proto-writing, abstract symbols used to convey ideas or religious meanings rather than direct phonetic language. Others believe the marks could be purely ritualistic, not linguistic. Charms, talismans, or votive offerings used in spiritual ceremonies. One of the tablets features a grid-like arrangement. Another bears what looks like a stylized tree. And the third, perhaps the most controversial, displays a cross inside a circle, accompanied by other glyphs. Are these cosmological diagrams, calendrical systems, lists of offerings, or something more complex? The mystery only deepens when one considers the burial context. Alongside the tablets were the charred remains of an adult, possibly a female, buried with the bones of a child and several ritual objects. The skeleton was coated in red ochre, a practice often associated with sacred or symbolic rites. Some researchers have suggested the woman was a shaman or priestess, possibly a figure of high status, buried with symbols of her power or knowledge. But the tablets raise larger questions, ones that stretch beyond the site itself. If these are indeed examples of writing, then where did they come from? There is no known precursor to them in the region. Did the Vinca culture independently develop a system of symbolic notation, separate from the better-known cradles of civilization in Mesopotamia and Egypt? Or were these symbols imported, echoes of an even older, lost tradition of written thought? The idea of a prehistoric European script challenges the traditional narrative of human development. It suggests that the flow of knowledge and innovation may not have been one way, from the Near East outward, but more complex, perhaps even reciprocal. Some theorists have gone further, proposing that the Balkans and Danube Basin were not cultural backwaters, but centers of early civilization, long before recorded history began. Of course, not all agree. Many experts caution against overinterpretation. The tablets are fragmentary, their context incomplete. Without accompanying inscriptions, without a Rosetta Stone to bridge symbol and sound, their meaning remains speculative. Language, after all, is more than symbols. It is structure, syntax, context. Yet the visual power of the Tortoria tablets persists. They whisper of a time before borders, before kings and conquests, when ideas moved not through empires, but through shared beliefs and sacred rites. They hint at a lost layer of human expression, one we may never fully decode, but one that reminds us that the human drive to communicate, to mark, to record, is far older than we think. Some fringe researchers, eager to connect the tablets to larger patterns, suggest links to the mythical lost civilizations of Atlantis or Lemuria. Others speculate about connections to Sumerian, Minoan, or even extraterrestrial knowledge, suggesting that the symbols contain ancient wisdom hidden in plain sight. These theories, while colorful, are unproven and lie outside the bounds of academic consensus. And yet, there is something undeniably haunting about the tablets. The way they have outlived their creators, the way they continue to resist interpretation, the way they feel so deliberate, like a message frozen in time, meant for someone who can no longer read it. What knowledge was held by the people of Tortoria? Did they believe they were recording something eternal? Or did they simply leave behind a ritual code meant only for the eyes of gods? We may never know for certain. But as we hold replicas of the tablets in museum halls, or gaze upon photographs of their strange markings, we are reminded that human history is not a straight line. It is a puzzle, one built from fragments, scattered across time. And every now and then, we uncover a piece that doesn't quite fit. Could the Tartaria tablets be one of those pieces? And if so, what story might they be trying to tell, still waiting in silence, across 5,000 years? Beneath the forests and farmland of Central Europe, below quiet villages and sunlit fields, there exists a network of tunnels that stretches silently through the earth. Narrow, winding, and curiously claustrophobic, these ancient underground passageways, known as Erdstall, have been discovered across Austria, southern Germany, the Czech Republic, and beyond. Dug by hand and shrouded in silence, they are unlike any known system of habitation, defense, or transport. And no one knows why they were built. The Erdstall tunnels are not grand. They are not lined with stone or decorated with carvings. They are modest in scale, often just wide enough for a person to crawl through on hands and knees. Some open into small, rounded chambers, while others lead nowhere, ending abruptly in the darkness. The passages frequently contain a feature called a Schlupfloch, a tight, narrow hole that connects one part of the tunnel to another, requiring those who enter to squeeze through in total submission to the space. There is no standard layout. Some systems are just a few meters long. Others stretch for hundreds of meters beneath the surface. They appear beneath churches, under hills, and in the basements of medieval farmhouses. Many have been sealed off or forgotten for centuries, only rediscovered during renovations, plowing, or excavation. And despite their obscurity, there are hundreds of them. Most are dated tentatively to the High Middle Ages, between 800 and 1200 AD, based on the sediment layers and artifacts occasionally found within. But without inscriptions, tools, or definitive datable materials, their age remains uncertain. Were they built by medieval monks, by fleeing peasants, or by a people whose name has been lost? Traditional theories offer practical explanations. Some suggest they were hiding places, used during times of war or invasion. But their design, narrow, maze-like, and without ventilation, makes them poor shelters. They lack storage areas, signs of prolonged use, or any evidence of occupation. Others suggest they were used for ritual or spiritual purposes. But again, the lack of iconography or artifacts complicates this view. A more recent theory posits that the tunnels served symbolic or initiatory roles, rites of passage meant to simulate death and rebirth. The act of crawling, alone and blind through stone, passing through the Schlupfloch like a womb of earth, may have represented transformation, purification, or penance. In this light, the Erdstall is not a destination, but a journey. Still, others see them as remnants of a much older tradition, perhaps copied or inherited from forgotten practices. Could they be part of a prehistoric legacy, later adapted by medieval hands? Or were they created for purposes now alien to us? Psychological, esoteric, or even astronomical? And then, there are the legends. In local folklore, the tunnels are said to be the work of dwarves, or the underground people, mythical beings who live beneath the land. In Austria and Bavaria, stories abound of small, secret folk who dwell in hidden spaces, moving through the soil unseen. Some say the tunnels are the last traces of their world. Others whisper that they still use them. There are tales, too, of disappearances, of people who entered the tunnels and were never seen again, of strange lights, inexplicable drafts of wind, and sounds that echo too long. While these stories cannot be verified, they speak to something deeper, the unsettling sense that these spaces are not entirely empty. Could the Erdstall tunnels be aligned with natural features, springs, fault lines, or magnetic anomalies? Might they reflect a form of geomantic knowledge, a way of interacting with the land's hidden energies? Such ideas have been proposed in other ancient sites, from Malta to Ireland. Could these subterranean passages serve a similar, forgotten function? Or are we simply confronted by one of history's great absences? A structure without context, a system without a key. Unlike many ancient mysteries, the Erdstall tunnels offer no grandeur to distract from their enigma. They are raw and tactile, close to the body, close to the ground. They do not reach for the sky, but dig towards something deeper. They are difficult to enter, and more difficult to leave unchanged. Their builders left no sign. Their purpose remains unstated. And their silence endures. As more tunnels are discovered, beneath farms, beneath roads, beneath our feet, the mystery grows. Each one adds to the map, but not to the meaning. And so we are left to wonder, were these tunnels practical, ritual, psychological? Or were they something else entirely? Something that does not fit into our modern categories of use and purpose? The Erdstall are not just structures, they are invitations to descend, to enter, to imagine. They whisper of things buried not just in earth, but in memory. In the deep places where history becomes myth. Why were these tunnels carved in secret? What stories lie sealed in the stone? And if we crawl through them long enough, what might we find waiting on the other side? Deep within the Ural Mountains of Russia, far from the ruins of temples and cities that typically mark the passage of ancient cultures, a figure rises from the shadows of deep time. Carved not from stone, but from a single larch tree more than 5 meters tall, it stands with a silent authority that defies its fragility. This is the Shigir idol, the oldest known wooden sculpture ever discovered. And it is older than any known pyramid, temple, or written word. Unearthed in 1894 from a peat bog near Kirovgrad, the idol was found in fragments, preserved by the unique anaerobic environment of the bog's dark waters. Peat, in its slow, acidic decay, had kept the wood from rotting for nearly 12,000 years. Radiocarbon dating has confirmed its astonishing antiquity, nearly 11,600 BC, placing it at the close of the last ice age, a time when woolly mammoths still roamed, and much of Europe remained locked in glacial breath. But what makes the Shigir idol so haunting isn't just its age. It is the mystery woven into its carved surface. From head to base, the figure is etched with a pattern of geometric symbols, zigzags, herringbones, chevrons, and human-like faces. These are not random markings. They are organized, deliberate, repeating. A form of language, perhaps, or memory, or warning. The figure itself is stylized, a long totem-like body with a flat, expressive face at the top. Beneath it, other faces emerge, some distorted, others abstract. There may be as many as 7 in total. What do they represent? Spirits? Ancestors? Gods? Or is the idol itself a being, an entity meant to embody something greater than the sum of its lines? Mainstream archaeologists have interpreted the idol as a ritual object, possibly a totemic monument that marked sacred space, encoded tribal lore, or honored the dead. Its creation would have required tools of surprising precision, most likely stone adzes, and a complex understanding of both art and symbolism, at a time when humans were thought to be only just emerging from a purely nomadic, hunter-gatherer existence. But the idol's very existence challenges that narrative. It suggests that complex belief systems, abstract thinking, and symbolic representation were not the exclusive domain of settled agricultural societies. They existed, perhaps even flourished, among the so-called primitive peoples of the Mesolithic world. Could it be that humans of this era had cosmologies and systems of thought as rich as any that came after, even if they left behind no cities or scripts? Some researchers have gone further, speculating that the symbols on the idol might represent an early form of proto-writing, a forgotten script from a time before writing. Others propose that the iconography encodes cosmological knowledge, cycles of the seasons, movements of animals, even alignments with celestial events. More speculative still are theories that the Shigir idol contains information preserved from a lost civilization, perhaps one that collapsed with the end of the Ice Age and left behind only scattered traces in oral traditions and anomalous artifacts. To those who follow such fringe paths, the idol is a remnant of pre-flood knowledge, a whisper from a world before ours. Yet the idol offers no key, no Rosetta Stone. Its language, if language it is, remains locked within the grooves of ancient wood. Its placement within a bog is itself curious. Was it deliberately buried as part of a ritual, offered to the earth as a sacrifice? Or was the bog simply a forgotten place that later happened to preserve what would have otherwise rotted to dust? And why was the figure so tall, originally more than 5 meters before damage and decay? Was it meant to be seen from a distance, looming in the forest, or watching over a sacred lake? Or was it erected indoors, in some great wooden structure, long since lost to time? The idol's carvings are thought-provoking, not just for their aesthetic complexity, but for their lack of reference points. There is nothing quite like it in the archaeological record, not from that era, and not from that region. It is a standalone mystery, unmoored from known traditions, yet carrying the unmistakable signature of deep symbolic purpose. We often think of ancient history as the slow upward march of complexity, from stone tools to cities, from marks in clay to the modern world. But the Shigir idol is a reminder that the past may not be a linear staircase, but a landscape of forgotten peaks and valleys, some of them obscured, some never explored. Who carved this figure from the frozen forest so many millennia ago? What compelled them to create something so intricate, so monumental, in a world we imagine as simple and survival-driven? And what meanings have we lost in the time between their hands and ours? The idol now stands in a museum in Yekaterinburg, encased in glass, preserved under dim lights. Yet even here, far from the peat bog that cradled it for so long, it feels alive, watching, waiting, enduring. Is it a guardian of forgotten knowledge? A memory carved in wood before the memory of history? Or is it something even simpler and more profound? A testament to the eternal human need to leave behind a mark, to speak across the abyss of time. Whatever its purpose, the Shigir idol still speaks, not in words, but in wonder. In the heart of Santa Fe, New Mexico, where the golden light of the desert spills through narrow adobe streets, there stands a chapel that holds more than quiet devotion. Within the Loreto Chapel, modest, serene, and Gothic in design, rises a spiral staircase that has defied architects, engineers, and visitors alike for well over a century. Elegant and curving, seemingly suspended in mid-air, the Loreto staircase is not only a marvel of craftsmanship, but a mystery without clear origin. It winds upward in 2 complete 360-degree turns, rising to the choir loft without any visible means of support. No central pole, no attached wall brace. It appears to float, anchored only at the base and the top. And it is made entirely of wood. No nails were used in its construction, only wooden pegs. Even today, it stands firm, supporting weight and time, without the usual reinforcements that modern staircases depend upon. The story behind it begins in the late 1800s. The chapel had been completed in 1878 by the Sisters of Loreto, but a critical detail was missing: access to the choir loft. The loft stood over 20 feet above the chapel floor, and the building's compact interior left little space for a conventional staircase. A ladder was deemed impractical and dangerous for the aging nuns who needed to reach the loft regularly for service. Legend has it that the sisters prayed a novena to Saint Joseph, the the patron saint of carpenters, asking for divine guidance. On the 9th and final day, a mysterious man arrived, leading a donkey and carrying only simple tools. He offered to build the staircase and asked for no pay. Over the next several months, he worked alone in the chapel, using no blueprints and leaving no trace of his identity. When the staircase was finished, he disappeared without word or payment. To the nuns, it was a miracle. To engineers, it remains a structural puzzle. The staircase uses no nails, glue, or metal hardware, just wooden dowels. Its tight spiral design appears to distribute weight in a way that bypasses the need for a central support column, a feature most spiral staircases depend upon for stability. The entire structure rests delicately on the chapel floor and against the choir loft above, like a wooden spring under precise tension. Even more curious is the type of wood used. It is a dense, high-quality spruce, not native to the region, and of a species that some claim has never been conclusively identified. It is as if the wood itself appeared with the carpenter, arriving, like the man, from nowhere. Mainstream explanations suggest that the builder may have been a highly skilled itinerant craftsman, possibly a French carpenter trained in traditional European joinery. Some have proposed that the staircase could have been constructed using principles of geometric self-support, common in certain architectural traditions, though such precision would have required expertise far beyond the standard practices in the American Southwest at the time. Still, the absence of documentation raises questions. There are no records of payment, no blueprints, no signed craftsmanship, a rarity for a structure so finely made. And the man who built it left behind no name, no address, no trace. Some believe the mysterious carpenter may have been a member of a secretive guild, preserving old-world knowledge passed down through generations. Others suggest he was a religious figure himself, answering a call to serve without need for recognition. And then, there are those who believe the staircase truly was a miracle. The chapel's faithful have long seen the staircase as a sign of divine intervention, an answer to prayer crafted by a figure sent from heaven. The coincidence of the novena, the sudden arrival of the builder, and the staircase's improbable structure all point, in their view, to something beyond human skill. More speculative theories go further still. Could the staircase be an example of forgotten knowledge, an echo of ancient engineering principles known to early builders and lost in time? Some even draw comparisons to the great mysteries of megalithic architecture, feats of balance and structure that seem to exceed the known capabilities of their era. Others question the symbolic nature of the spiral itself. Throughout history, the spiral has been a powerful symbol of ascension, rebirth, spiritual evolution. From Neolithic carvings to Gothic architecture, the spiral marks transitions between worlds, movement from the earthly to the divine. Could the staircase have served more than a functional purpose? Could it have been designed to evoke transformation, a physical metaphor for the spiritual journey? As visitors climb its steps today, they often describe a sense of wonder, even reverence. The curve, the silence, the unexplainable grace of the construction. Each step draws the mind upward, not just physically, but reflectively. Who was the builder? How did he create something so enduring, with such limited tools and resources? Was he a forgotten master, a humble artisan, or something else entirely? And more intriguingly, why did he come? Why did he leave without a word? Why here, in this quiet corner of the New Mexico desert? The staircase endures not only as an architectural marvel, but as a question, a symbol carved in wood, spiraling toward the unknown. In an age where so much is measured, modeled, and explained, the Loretto staircase reminds us that some stories still resist certainty. Some mysteries remain just that, silent, sacred, and waiting. In a quiet corner of Romania, near the banks of the Mureș River, the land gave up something curious. It was 1974, in the town of Ayud, when workers excavating a trench stumbled upon a set of unusual objects buried in a layer of sand and clay. Among them were two fossilized bones, believed to belong to an extinct species of mastodon, creatures that last roamed the earth tens of thousands of years ago. But the third object was different. It was not bone, nor stone. It was metal. Roughly the size of a human hand, the artifact appeared to be a wedge-shaped piece of cast metal, corroded with age, but unmistakably artificial. It had a smooth, curved structure, reminiscent of a mechanical component, perhaps part of a machine or an aircraft. Some even said it resembled the foot of a landing gear. It came to be known as the Wedge of Ayud. Initial analyses suggested something unexpected. The wedge was primarily made of aluminum, an element not found in metallic form in nature and requiring high temperatures to extract from ore. What's more, the object was reportedly found embedded in the same layer as the mastodon bones, suggesting it had lain undisturbed for at least 10,000 years. But aluminum wasn't successfully refined until the 19th century. How could a sophisticated aluminum alloy end up in a prehistoric layer of Earth? The mystery began to take shape. Scientific testing was conducted in the 1970s and 1990s by different laboratories. The alloy was found to contain around 90% aluminum, with traces of copper, zinc, lead, and other metals. Some reports even mentioned unusual structural features, tiny holes and tool marks that suggested machining. To those familiar with metallurgy, the results were puzzling. It was as if the object had been manufactured using techniques far more advanced than what was known to any ancient culture. Skeptics, however, have raised important questions. Could the wedge have simply been a piece of modern machinery that accidentally found its way into the excavation site, misidentified and misstated? The possibility of stratigraphic disturbance, layers of Earth being mixed by natural forces or human activity, has been proposed. After all, sites under construction are not pristine archaeological digs. The lack of clear documentation surrounding the original find complicates matters further. Photographs of the object in situ are scarce. No peer-reviewed studies have been widely published. And over time, the details have become clouded with repetition, speculation, and reinterpretation. Still, the wedge continues to fascinate. Some researchers consider it an example of an OO-part, an out-of-place artifact that challenges conventional timelines. Could it be evidence of a forgotten civilization, capable of metallurgy beyond its age? Or a fragment from an ancient crash, a relic of a technology we've never seen? Others have gone further, suggesting extraterrestrial involvement. The artifact's shape, material composition, and lack of known function have led to claims that it may be part of a spacecraft, perhaps lost or discarded in some unknown epoch of contact. These ideas are often dismissed by mainstream science, yet they persist in fringe circles, fueled by the object's ambiguity and eerie context. Alternative explanations have also emerged within more grounded frameworks. Some believe the wedge could be a part of a modern tool, possibly a piece of mining equipment or aircraft debris, that was simply misidentified. Its age may have been misunderstood due to poor excavation protocols or contamination of dating samples. And yet, there is no consensus. The Wedge of Ayud remains in the custody of the National History Museum of Transylvania in Cluj-Napoca, though it is not often on public display. Over the years, it has become a footnote in larger debates about the nature of progress, the limits of historical memory, and the possibility that our understanding of the past may be incomplete. What makes this object so compelling is not just what it is, but where it was found and what it implies. It forces us to confront the edges of what we assume to be true. It whispers of technological echoes in places where they do not belong. and it reminds us that sometimes the soil holds more than we expect. Could this be a case of mistaken context, or something more, a fragment of a story long buried? In the quiet rooms where the wedge rests, under glass and dim lighting, there are no labels proclaiming answers, only questions. Only the silent weight of a crafted object, nestled among the bones of creatures long extinct. What hand shaped this metal? What tools forged it? And why did it come to rest beneath the earth, waiting to be found? Perhaps the wedge of Ayud is just a curiosity, born of coincidence and confusion. Or perhaps it is a key, left behind in the layers of time, pointing to a history we have yet to uncover. South of the towering Andes and the arid Nazca Plains, in the desert valleys near the Peruvian town of Ica, there exists a collection of artifacts as enigmatic as they are controversial. In simple stone rooms, behind glass or arranged in shadowy piles, lie thousands of smooth, andesite pebbles, black and heavy, many no larger than a loaf of bread. Their surfaces are etched with images that should not be possible. These are the Ica stones. Carved into their polished surfaces are scenes that baffle the imagination. Some depict men in apparent surgical settings, performing heart transplants, brain operations, or using tools that resemble telescopes and scalpels. Others show dinosaurs, brontosaurs, stegosaurs, and pterosaurs, interacting with humans. There are maps of the continents as they may have once appeared, prior to continental drift, and illustrations of celestial alignments, charts, and devices unknown to the archaeological record. If these stones are genuine relics from a lost civilization, then they rewrite everything we think we know about human history. But the story of the Ica stones is tangled, unclear, and controversial from the very beginning. The stones first came to public attention in the 1960s when Peruvian physician Dr. Javier Cabrera Darquea began collecting them. According to his own account, the first stone came into his possession as a birthday gift, an odd curiosity brought to him by a local farmer. Intrigued, he sought more, and soon accumulated a vast collection numbering in the thousands. Many came from local villagers who claimed to have found them in desert caves near the Nazca lines and other ancient sites. Cabrera became convinced that the stones were the remnants of a pre-flood civilization, millions of years old, one advanced enough to coexist with dinosaurs, perform complex surgeries, and chart the stars. He believed the stones were a message left behind, a kind of library of stone, preserving the lost knowledge of an ancient people he called Homo sapiens sapiens. For Cabrera, these weren't just artifacts, they were proof. But mainstream archaeology tells a different story. Almost immediately after the stones gained public attention, controversy followed. In 1973, a man named Basilio Uchuya, a local farmer who had supplied many of the stones to Cabrera, publicly admitted that he had created them himself. Using a dentist's drill and simple stone carving techniques, he claimed to have etched the images for profit, fabricating whatever images buyers wanted. Uchuya even demonstrated his methods to journalists and said he had never found the stones in caves or tombs as claimed. For many, this confession was the final word. The Ica stones were hoaxes, crafted by locals and bought in bulk by eager collectors. No archaeological site had ever yielded them in context. No academic institution endorsed their authenticity. And yet, the mystery didn't disappear, because not all the stones are the same. Some of the Ica stones do appear to be modern creations, carved quickly, lacking wear, their images bold but shallow. But others, especially those obtained decades earlier or housed in obscure museum collections, seem different. They exhibit weathering and oxidation. The grooves are worn, the surfaces patinated with age. And the style of carving, simple, geometric, sometimes even abstract, is not inconsistent with known pre-Columbian artwork. Could it be that some of the stones are modern fabrications, while others are genuinely old? Might the practice of carving stone with symbolic images go back further than we think? There's also the deeper question. Even if some are authentic, what do the images mean? Were they intended literally or symbolically? A man riding a dinosaur, does it depict coexistence or a myth? A surgery, does it document an event or represent healing in a more spiritual sense? Without context, no written language, no accompanying artifacts, interpretation becomes a mirror, reflecting back our own expectations. Dr. Cabrera believed the stones held scientific knowledge far ahead of their time, but others suggest the images may be the result of 20th century influence, local artists inspired by books, radio, or even early cinema. Peru, after all, was not isolated in the mid-20th century. News traveled, stories spread, and sometimes the line between tradition and imagination blurs. Some fringe researchers maintain that the stones are real records of ancient human activity, preserved not only in the Andes, but echoed in other anomalous finds across the world, such as the Dropa stones of China or the Baghdad Battery. Could the Ica stones be part of a broader, forgotten legacy, one deliberately ignored or erased? Skeptics remain firm. Without excavation data, peer-reviewed studies, or contextual evidence, the stones cannot be considered legitimate artifacts. But believers continue to point to the sheer number, variety, and consistency of the images as signs of something more. Today, the Ica stones sit in a small museum run by the Cabrera family, a dusty and quiet place away from the spotlight of official archaeology. Visitors can still view the stones, still hold them, still feel their weight and mystery. There, in the silence, questions remain. If these images were carved by ancient hands, how did they know the forms of extinct animals, the structure of the heart, the stars? And if the stones are all hoaxes, why were so many made, with such effort and consistency, over so many years? Are the Ica stones a forgotten archive, or a complex illusion born of belief, prophet, and myth? As the sun sets over the Peruvian desert, and the wind stirs the sand around the Nazca lines, one cannot help but wonder, what else may lie buried in the dust of time, waiting, not to be believed, but to be asked about, again and again? Deep within the earth of South Africa's western Transvaal, miners digging through layers of ancient rock have occasionally brought to light something that defies easy explanation. In the dark seams of pyrophyllite, a soft sedimentary mineral dating back nearly 3 billion years, small, metallic-looking spheres have been discovered. Perfectly round or gently flattened, etched with fine grooves running around their equators, these objects are known as the Klerksdorp spheres. Some are no larger than a marble. Others reach several centimeters in diameter. Most are composed of a hard, reddish material with a metallic sheen, sometimes with white or golden flecks embedded in their surface. And many, strikingly, bear a symmetry that feels deliberate, almost machined. They were first documented by miners in the 1970s near the town of Ottosdal, and later analyzed by geologists and museum curators. One example, now housed at the Museum of Klerksdorp, was displayed with a label noting its perfect balance and unexplained origin. That phrase alone sparked decades of debate. The rock in which these spheres were found, pyrophyllite, is Precambrian, over 2.8 billion years old. This alone gives the discovery its air of mystery. How could a shaped object, appearing man-made, exist in rock formed long before humans walked the earth? Mainstream scientists have proposed a natural explanation. According to geologists, the spheres are a type of concretion, natural formations that occur when minerals precipitate around a central nucleus over immense spans of time. The grooves, they say, may be the result of layering or differential erosion. Spheres, after all, are a common shape in natural processes. From water droplets to planetary bodies, the universe tends towards symmetry. But these are no ordinary concretions. Some spheres appear too uniform, too smooth, too mathematically balanced for comfort. Several display concentric ridges so even that they seem carved. Others are divided by perfect parallel grooves, suggesting turning or shaping, as if by a lathe. And it's not just their appearance. Some accounts from the 1980s claim that the spheres were tested and found to be perfectly balanced, even under high-precision instruments used in aerospace industries. Whether or not these tests were repeated or documented remains unclear, but the claims have persisted in the public imagination. Are these truly natural formations, or something more? Speculation, as it often does, reaches into deeper waters. Some fringe researchers have proposed that the spheres are remnants of an ancient, forgotten civilization, one advanced enough to manufacture objects with precision, long before our current understanding of history allows. Others believe they are not terrestrial at all. Could they be artifacts from an earlier epoch of intelligent life, lost, buried, and erased by the passage of geological time? More speculative still are the suggestions that the spheres might be evidence of extraterrestrial visitation. Their metallic sheen, balanced form, and mysterious grooves have led some to describe them as probes, data capsules, or even components of unknown machines. But no evidence of function has ever been found. Skeptics urge caution, pointing out that while the spheres are certainly curious, no controlled excavation has yielded them in pristine, documented context. Many were retrieved by miners, not archaeologists. The surrounding rock, though ancient, can contain natural cavities that allow modern objects to infiltrate. Could some of the more unusual spheres be modern items, inadvertently introduced into older deposits? It's possible. But others argue that even when accounting for such explanations, there remains something about the spheres that resists full dismissal. Like the Ica stones of Peru, or the Antikythera mechanism of Greece, the Klerksdorp spheres sit uneasily on the border between the explainable and the enigmatic. Too easily dismissed to be embraced by science, yet too strange to be forgotten by mystery seekers. And perhaps that is their power, not in what they prove, but in what they provoke. The Klerksdorp spheres challenge our assumptions about time, about technology, about the certainty of the archaeological record. They ask us to consider the vastness of Earth's history, so much deeper and older than our human story, and wonder what might have been buried, lost, or erased, not over centuries, but over eons. Could these spheres be relics of natural processes we do not yet fully understand? Or could they be something else, an echo of intelligence, of order, from a time long before the known world began? They remain on display in the museum, locked behind glass, inert and quiet. Visitors pass by them daily, some with curiosity, some with skepticism. Few linger long. But for those who do, the questions begin to rise. Who, if anyone, shaped these spheres? For what purpose? And why are they found in rock formed billions of years before human memory? Perhaps they are nothing more than geological oddities, the slow handiwork of nature's own symmetry. Or perhaps they are messages in stone, waiting patiently for someone, someday, to read them. In the gentle hills of central France, near the small rural hamlet of Glozelle, the earth once yielded something unexpected. It was March 1st, 1924, and a young farmer named Émile Fradin, just 17 years old, was plowing a field with his grandfather when the plow struck a stone. What they uncovered beneath was not just a stone slab, but the entrance to a burial chamber, one that would ignite one of the most enduring archaeological controversies of the 20th century. Inside were human remains, ceramic vessels, carved bone tools, and most strikingly, clay tablets. dozens of them inscribed with strange symbols. Symbols that resembled letters, but not from any known alphabet. Some were simple markings, others were complex and flowing. They came to be known as the glosal tablets, and with them, the mystery began. The find quickly drew the attention of French archaeologists and scholars. At first, the reaction was one of astonishment. Could this be evidence of an unknown culture, hidden in the heart of France? A prehistoric people who had developed a written language? If authentic, the tablets would have rewritten the understanding of European prehistory. But the excitement did not last. As more tablets and artifacts were unearthed, over 3,000 in total, the academic world grew divided. The writing on the tablets was unlike anything seen before. It bore resemblance to Phoenician, Iberian, even Etruscan scripts, yet matched none precisely. Some symbols seemed to echo runes, others looked entirely unique. And the apparent age of the artifacts, some radiocarbon dated to as early as 10,000 BC, only deepened the mystery. How could a sophisticated system of symbols exist in France at a time when Europe was thought to be inhabited only by hunter-gatherers? Doubts began to rise. Some archaeologists accused the young Freydin of fraud, claiming the tablets had been forged and planted to attract attention or profit. A highly publicized investigation was launched. Forensic analysis was inconclusive. The French Academy of Sciences sent experts, some of whom declared the site a hoax. Others defended its authenticity. The village of Glosel became a battleground, not of armies, but of reputations, egos, and clashing interpretations. At the center was Émile Fradin himself, who maintained his innocence until his death in 2010, never wavering in his claim that the artifacts were genuine and untouched. Modern analysis has added new layers to the story. Thermoluminescence testing of the tablets in the 1990s dated some of the ceramics to around 300 BC, lending weight to their authenticity. Yet other tablets appear newer, perhaps forgeries mixed in with genuine finds, either to attract continued interest or as deliberate disinformation. The site, once disturbed, became too compromised to offer a clear archaeological context. What remains undisputed is the peculiar nature of the writing itself. The glosal script, if it can be called that, remains undeciphered. It lacks the repetition and consistency typical of linguistic systems, yet it is too deliberate to be meaningless. Was it an early form of writing, proto-script, used for ritual or symbolic purposes? Could it have been a local expression of a larger, now lost cultural tradition? Or is it possible that Glosel was a point of contact between ancient peoples, between traditions, where influences mingled and evolved in ways that left only whispers in the soil? Some fringe theories suggest the tablets record the language of an unknown civilization, perhaps a lost Celtic tribe, or even a remnant of a prehistoric European people whose language left no trace in written history. Others entertain the possibility that Glosel was part of a secret script used for initiation, or that it represents a symbolic system entirely unrelated to spoken language, an early system of numerology, astronomy, or even ritual magic. Still others wonder whether the glosal tablets are simply a mirror, reflecting more about our modern need for origins, for mystery, than about the ancient world itself. If the Glosel site is a hoax, it is among the most elaborate and sustained in archaeological history. But if it is real, if even some of the tablets are genuine, then what do they tell us about the capacity of prehistoric humans in Europe? About what we have lost, and what we assume? There are no final answers. The Glosel collection remains largely unstudied in depth, still awaiting a comprehensive, unbiased re-examination with modern tools and open minds. Today, the artifacts are housed in a small private museum near the original site, maintained by the Fradin family, a quiet repository of questions that science has yet to settle. They sit there, under dim lights and glass, these small clay tablets inscribed with their silent symbols. Who carved them? For what purpose? Were they recording thoughts, names, prayers? Or were they encoding something else entirely, something we no longer understand? In the quiet fields of Glosel, the wind still rustles through the grass, as it did the day the first tablet was found. And beneath the soil, perhaps, more secrets remain, waiting to be unearthed, waiting to be read. In the arid cliffs near Qumran, above the silent expanse of the Dead Sea, caves whisper secrets long buried by time. In 1952, amidst the dust and crumbling stone of Cave 3, archaeologists uncovered something wholly unlike any of the other Dead Sea Scrolls. It was not parchment, nor papyrus. It was metal, cold, rigid, and corroded with age. This was the Copper Scroll. Rolled tightly and broken into two brittle segments, the scroll could not be unrolled by hand without destroying it. It had to be cut, section by section, revealing its contents not as religious scripture or philosophical reflection, but as a list of buried treasure. Etched into the thin sheet of copper were more than 60 entries. Each one detailed a cache of gold, silver, vessels, or sacred objects, hidden beneath steps, behind walls, near specific landmarks. Some entries were precise, down to the cubit. Others were more cryptic, referring to places and people no longer known. One entry reads, "In the cistern which is in the courtyard of the burial chamber, in the third terrace, 65 bars of gold." Another, "In the cave of the old washer's chamber, on the third platform, 70 talents of silver." Taken together, the list outlines over 4,600 talents of precious metals, an astronomical amount by ancient standards, worth billions today. Yet no treasure has ever been found. Unlike the other Dead Sea Scrolls, many of which are copies of biblical texts, commentaries, or sectarian rules, the Copper Scroll stands apart. It is purely utilitarian. No theology, no narrative, just directions. As if someone had left behind a key to something immense and carefully hidden. But who would hide such a treasure? And why? Scholars believe the Copper Scroll dates to between 100 and 200 AD, placing it around the time of the Roman destruction of the Second Temple in Jerusalem in 70 AD. One theory suggests that the treasure was the wealth of the temple itself, hidden by priests during the siege to prevent its capture. In this view, the Copper Scroll is a ledger of what remained unclaimed, sealed in copper to withstand time and loss. But other theories complicate the picture. Some researchers propose that the scroll may have originated from a separate group, perhaps the Essenes, a Jewish sect associated with the Qumran community. If so, the treasure could have been accumulated over decades, part of a vast underground economy meant to support a hidden movement. Still, others believe the list may be allegorical, symbolic locations referring to spiritual truths or esoteric knowledge, rather than literal gold. The detailed nature of the instructions, however, suggests otherwise. If it is allegory, it is a remarkably convincing one. And then there are those who question the entire premise. Could the scroll be a decoy, a piece of misinformation, a riddle meant to lead seekers astray, or to something more important than wealth? No excavation based on the scroll's directions has yielded results. Many of the landmarks described, such as the Valley of Achor or the Council Chamber, cannot be confidently identified today. Others are so vague as to be unusable. The scroll may well reference locations that were already ancient and forgotten, even at the time of writing. And yet, the mystery endures. Over the years, treasure hunters and scholars alike have searched for the hoard. Expeditions have scoured the Judean desert. Metal detectors have swept the hills. None have succeeded. Could the treasure have already been found and hidden again? Could it have been looted by the Romans, or lost beneath lands now changed beyond recognition? Or was it never hidden at all? The craftsmanship of the scroll is itself a clue. Copper, unlike parchment, resists decay. Was the scroll meant to survive fire, moisture, and time? Was it left for someone in particular, someone meant to find and follow it? Curiously, a second, much shorter copper scroll was discovered later in another Qumran cave. It contained only a few lines, and its connection to the original remains unclear. Was it a key, a copy, a continuation? The questions multiply. Why was this single scroll written in a different script, on a different material, with such practical purpose? Who knew of its hiding? Who created it, and for whom? Even among the many mysteries of the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Copper Scroll stands apart. Not just as an archaeological enigma, but as a narrative fragment, a story untold, a treasure map without a marked end. And so, the Copper Scroll remains where it began, a puzzle of place and time, a list carved in metal, left in a cave, waiting in silence. It offers no conclusions, only the same refrain, entry after entry. In the mound at the north corner, beneath the stone. In the gutter beneath the seventh step. In the hollow beneath the great rock at the spring. Perhaps the treasure is long gone. Perhaps it never existed. Or perhaps it still waits, buried beneath centuries of silence, beneath earth that remembers more than it reveals. What if someone did follow its steps? And what exactly would they find? In the rolling hills of western Anatolia, near the quiet village of Beykay in modern-day Turkey, a long-forgotten inscription once lay etched into a block of stone. Massive, ancient, and covered in a script that few in the modern world could read. The stone has since disappeared, its surface lost to time, or repurposed into the walls of nearby buildings. But what was once written upon it has continued to ripple through the world of archaeology, like a half-remembered echo from a forgotten civilization. These are the Luwian hieroglyphs of Beykay. The story begins in the late 19th century, when French archaeologist Georges Perrault reported the discovery of a large stone stele near Beykay, inscribed with a series of enigmatic symbols. These symbols did not resemble the Egyptian hieroglyphs familiar to European scholars, nor the cuneiform tablets emerging from Mesopotamian digs. They were something else, stylized, geometric, and strange. The script was identified as Luwian, the language of a long-lost people who once inhabited Anatolia during the Late Bronze Age and Early Iron Age. And then, the stone vanished. According to local reports, the stele was dismantled, its valuable stone reused in local construction before the inscription could be fully recorded. For decades, only sketches and brief notes remained. The Beykay inscription passed into obscurity, remembered more as a curiosity than a crucial key. But in 2017, the mystery returned with new force. A copy of the inscription, reportedly transcribed by archaeologist Georges Perrault himself before the stele's destruction, was rediscovered in the archives of famed British scholar James Mellart. For years, Mellart had maintained an interest in Luwian culture, and in his papers, researchers found a detailed, hand-copied version of the Beykay inscription. Working from these notes, linguists and epigraphers re-examined the text. What they translated was extraordinary. The inscription, if genuine, dates to around 1190 BC and appears to be a royal proclamation by a Luwian king named Kupanta Karunta. In it, he claims control over a powerful confederation in western Anatolia, one that survived the collapse of the Hittite Empire. Even more remarkably, it suggests that this kingdom launched naval campaigns into the eastern Mediterranean, possibly even playing a role in the wave of destruction attributed to the mysterious Sea Peoples who upended Bronze Age civilizations from Greece to Egypt. If true, this single text could rewrite a crucial chapter of ancient history. It offers a rare first-person account from a Luwian ruler, expanding our understanding of a people often relegated to the periphery of Near Eastern studies. It places them not as minor vassals or footnotes in the Hittite annals, but as major players in the shifting landscape of the late Bronze Age collapse. But the problem remains. The original stone is gone. And with its absence, doubt has followed. Critics have questioned the authenticity of the inscription found in Mellart's papers. Some suggest that Mellart may have exaggerated, or even fabricated, the document, either intentionally or out of enthusiasm for the Luwian cause. Others argue that the content is consistent with known Luwian texts, and that its syntax and vocabulary match what little has survived from the period. So, what are we left with? A lost stone, a rediscovered copy, and a story too compelling to ignore. Who were the Luwians? And how much of their history has been lost beneath layers of Hittite, Greek, and Roman domination? Archaeologically, the Luwians were a bridge, a people connected by geography and language to both the Hittites of Anatolia and the Mycenaeans of the Aegean. Their hieroglyphic script, written in columns that read from top to bottom, left to right, is found sporadically across Turkey and northern Syria. Often, these inscriptions appear on rock faces or monuments, proclaiming victories or lineages in a language still only partially understood. But the Baykari inscription, if real, would be the longest and most historically detailed of all Luwian texts. A key that might connect scattered pieces of a puzzle that spans centuries. Was Kupanta Karunta a real king? Did he lead naval forces against the great cities of the Eastern Mediterranean? Could this explain the devastating synchrony of the Bronze Age collapse? A coordinated campaign, not a chaotic migration? Or are we chasing shadows? Reading too much into a copy of a copy, with the original lost to weather and stonecutters? The region around Baykari has yet to yield a matching stele, a supporting inscription, or archaeological evidence to confirm the story. And yet, something about the Luwian script, the elegance of its form, the isolation of its voice, feels like a whisper carried from a forgotten corridor of history. What else might lie beneath the soil of Anatolia? Are there other stelae, other inscriptions waiting to be uncovered, written not by the great empires we know, but by the peoples who dwelled in their shadow? Perhaps one day another stone will emerge, bearing the same name, the same script, the same proclamation. Until then, the Luwian hieroglyphs of Baykari remain a tantalizing possibility. A lost message from a vanished king, preserved only in paper and memory. What if the words are real? And what if the history they tell is only the beginning? In the fertile valleys of the Danube, where soft rivers meander through what is now Serbia and Romania, traces of a forgotten world lie buried beneath layers of quiet soil. Here, among fragments of clay, charred wood, and worn stone, archaeologists have unearthed the remains of one of Europe's oldest known civilizations, a culture sophisticated, enigmatic, and strikingly advanced for its time. It is known today as the Vinča culture. Its settlements date back as far as 5700 BC, a time when much of Europe was still ruled by small, nomadic groups. But the Vinča people built organized villages, crafted finely decorated pottery, practiced metallurgy, and created ceramic figurines with stylized, almost alien forms. And amid these artifacts, something even more mysterious emerges. A collection of symbols, inscribed into wet clay, baked into permanence, and spread across hundreds of sites. These are the Vinča symbols, markings that some believe may represent the earliest form of writing in the world. The symbols are found primarily on small clay tablets and the bases of pottery shards. They are simple, yet deliberate. Zigzags, chevrons, crosses, ladders, and branching lines. Some are abstract, others geometric. Each seems placed with care, arranged in patterns that suggest more than decoration, perhaps communication. Roughly 700 distinct characters have been catalogued, more than enough to form a functioning script. Some symbols appear repeatedly, others in isolation. While no long inscriptions have been found, certain tablets show groupings of symbols in horizontal and vertical lines, bearing an uncanny resemblance to early pictographic scripts, like those of Mesopotamia or the Indus Valley. But the Vinci symbols predate those known systems by several thousand years. What then were these markings? Were they merely proto-writing, mnemonic devices, property marks, ritual symbols? Or could they represent a forgotten language, a system of expression lost to time and never fully born into writing? Mainstream archaeology leans toward caution. Most experts suggest that the symbols were not part of a phonetic or grammatical system, but rather a symbolic language, used to denote ownership, lineage, or spiritual meaning. Similar uses of symbols are seen in other Neolithic cultures. Without longer texts or decipherable parallels, it is difficult to argue definitively that the Vinci signs constitute a true writing system. Yet the consistency and spread of the symbols raise questions. Why would so many settlements, some separated by hundreds of kilometers, share such a detailed and uniform set of symbols? How were they transmitted, and why were they preserved? Some scholars argue that the Vinci culture had a degree of social cohesion and symbolic sophistication unprecedented in prehistoric Europe. Their settlements were unusually large for the time, with planned layouts and standardized tools. Could this suggest a level of administrative complexity that required record-keeping, an early need for writing? More speculative voices suggest the Vinci people may have been the progenitors of an entire tradition of European script, one that faded before it could influence later civilizations. Others go further, imagining cultural diffusion that reached as far as Mesopotamia, where writing would later emerge in its most recognizable forms. Was there a lost thread of influence running through prehistoric Europe, one we have yet to uncover? The resemblance between some Vinci symbols and later characters in Linear A, the Phaistos disc, and even early Greek scripts has not gone unnoticed. Are these coincidences or echoes of an older symbolic heritage? Still more speculative theories link the Vinci culture to ancient myths of lost civilizations, suggesting they may have been part of a forgotten chapter in human history, one whose knowledge was erased by time, war, or natural disaster. These theories, though unsupported by hard evidence, persist in the cultural imagination. After all, what would it mean if writing began not in Sumer or Egypt, but in Neolithic Europe, only to be forgotten? The symbols remain undeciphered. There is no Rosetta Stone, no bilingual inscription, no surviving oral tradition to hint at what the signs once meant. They exist only in silence, carved into pottery, imprinted on figurines, preserved in clay buried beneath the earth for 7,000 years. Today, the Vinci artifacts are displayed in museums in Belgrade and across the Balkans. Visitors can gaze upon the symbols, small, faint scratches in ancient material. To the untrained eye, they may seem meaningless. But for those who look longer, the marks begin to resonate. They are messages sent from a people who had no way of knowing who might one day read them. Who carved these symbols? Were they priests, merchants, artisans? What were they trying to record? Trade, prayer, knowledge, names? And why did the script vanish? Was it absorbed, evolved, or simply abandoned when its need passed? We may never know. But the Vinci symbols remain, quiet proof that even in the deep past, long before empires and alphabets, people reached for meaning beyond speech. They marked their world not just with tools and homes, but with symbols, fragments of thought still waiting to be understood. What do these ancient marks whisper across millennia? And what else might still lie buried beneath the soil of Europe, waiting to speak again? In the high deserts of the American Southwest, where red cliffs rise against an endless sky and the wind carves silence into stone, the remnants of a vanished civilization still cling to the rock. Scattered across canyons and mesas from Colorado to Arizona are the ruins of the ancestral Puebloans, more widely known as the Anasazi. Their dwellings are etched into the landscape, complex cliffside villages, multi-story stone complexes, and ceremonial kivas that plunge into the earth like doorways to another world. Perhaps the most iconic of these sites is Chaco Canyon, in what is now northwestern New Mexico. Here, the Anasazi built great houses, massive planned buildings with hundreds of rooms, aligned precisely to solar and lunar events. They constructed vast roadways that stretched for miles across the desert, some leading to no obvious destination. At Mesa Verde, they carved entire villages into cliff alcoves, their sandstone homes hidden in the rock, both protected and remote. And then, they disappeared. By the late 13th century, these sites were abandoned. The great houses fell silent. The cliff dwellings were left behind. The kivas, once centers of spiritual life, sat empty beneath the stars. What happened to the Anasazi remains one of the most compelling and haunting mysteries of the North American past. Archaeologists have studied the disappearance for over a century. Mainstream theories focus on environmental stress, a prolonged drought beginning around 1275 AD that may have made agriculture unsustainable. Tree ring records show a dramatic decline in rainfall across the Colorado Plateau, lasting several decades. With water scarce, crops would have failed. Famine may have followed. There is also evidence of social upheaval, fortifications, signs of conflict, and sudden changes in architecture. Some villages seem to have been hastily abandoned. Walls were reinforced, entrances narrowed. Did violence play a role? Were the Anasazi communities threatened, from within or from neighboring groups? Cannibalism, too, has entered the conversation, based on controversial interpretations of butchered human remains. Some scholars suggest that in the face of extreme hardship, social norms may have broken down. Others argue that these remains reflect warfare or ritual practices, not desperation. Still, there is no single answer. What makes the Anasazi mystery so striking is not just the fact of their departure, but the scale of what they left behind. These were not small villages. Chaco Canyon, at its peak, may have supported thousands. Its construction required years of labor, careful planning, and astronomical knowledge. Roads ran in straight lines across impossible terrain. Some alignments trace solstices and equinoxes with precision. Was this merely practicality, or part of something deeper? Were the Anasazi tracking time, stars, and seasons for planting? Or were they seeking cosmic balance, building a sacred geography that mirrored the heavens? And what of their sudden dispersal? One theory suggests they did not vanish at all, but simply moved. Oral histories of the Hopi, Zuni, and Pueblo peoples speak of migrations, of great journeys, and of ancestral homes left behind for spiritual reasons. In this view, the Anasazi did not collapse, but transformed, becoming part of the living legacy of the Pueblo peoples of today. Yet even this migration raises questions. Why leave such monumental structures? Why abandon sacred places carved over centuries? Some suggest spiritual causes, a breakdown in harmony between people and land, requiring departure. Others look to celestial patterns, proposing that shifts in the skies may have signaled a time of change, or even doom. And then, there are the more speculative ideas. Could the Anasazi have been connected to a greater, Pan-American network of ancient cultures? Some researchers point to similarities in architecture, rock art, and mythology across distant regions, from Mesoamerica to the Mississippi Valley. Could there have been a deeper, older cultural web that we've only begun to recognize? Others speculate more boldly. Were the Great Kivas not just ritual spaces, but portals, spiritual or otherwise, meant to commune with forces beyond the ordinary? Was the alignment of roads and buildings a kind of map, not for trade, but for something else, cosmic or metaphysical? The ancient petroglyphs add further mystery. Carved into stone walls and canyon faces, the Anasazi left behind spirals, stars, horned beings, and scenes whose meaning has been lost to time. Some appear to depict solar eclipses, supernovae, and celestial events. Others are more abstract, almost otherworldly. Were these the records of skywatchers, or something more esoteric? No single theory has proven definitive. Today, the ruins remain open to the wind and sun, silent except for the echoes of distant footsteps. They are sacred to many native peoples, still remembered in prayer and tradition. But to others, they are questions carved in stone. Proof of a people who lived with a complexity we are only beginning to understand. Why did they build so high, so remote, so aligned? What knowledge did they possess? And what warning, if any, did their disappearance leave behind? Did the Anasazi walk away from their cities, or were they driven? And what echoes of their choices still reverberate across the desert, waiting to be heard again? In the northwestern reaches of Syria, not far from the ancient city of Aleppo, a quiet hill once held the remains of a forgotten sanctuary. Surrounded by olive groves and the silence of time, the Ayin Dara temple stood alone, a striking, solitary witness to a past civilization's religious life. Built over 3,000 years ago, during the Iron Age, its crumbling basalt blocks and intricate carvings whispered of gods, rituals, and mysteries long buried by dust and war. But among its most striking features, more than its lions and sphinxes, its ornate bas-reliefs or its similarities to the biblical Temple of Solomon, were the footprints. Carved into the stone threshold of the temple were a pair of enormous stylized footprints, each over a meter long. A few paces ahead, another single footprint appears, as though the figure had taken a step into the sanctuary. The scale is unmistakable. These were not human feet. They belonged, symbolically or otherwise, to a being far greater in size. A god, perhaps, or something the ancient builders revered as one. What purpose did these strange impressions serve? The Ayin Dara temple, discovered in the 1950s, was an archaeological revelation. Excavations revealed a symmetrical, tripartite layout: entry porch, main hall, inner sanctum, nearly identical in plan and proportion to the first temple of Jerusalem, attributed to Solomon and described in the Hebrew Bible. Both structures had walls decorated with mythical creatures, both featured raised platforms and basins, and both seemed to be designed as the earthly dwelling place of a divine presence. But Ayin Dara predates Solomon's temple by several centuries. It is older, its construction dated to around 1300 to 1000 BC. Could it have been a precursor, a model, or was it simply part of a broader, now largely lost regional tradition of temple architecture? The religious significance of the temple is clear. Its walls were covered with lions, sphinxes, and cherub-like figures, guardians of sacred thresholds. The temple's layout, with a raised podium and stairway leading to a closed inner chamber, suggests it was a space of initiation, perhaps off-limits to all but the priesthood. And then, at the entrance, the footprints. Were they symbolic, meant to represent the steps of a deity entering the sacred space? If so, they offer a stunning visual metaphor. The god is not imagined, but present, real, immense, and walking among mortals. Or could there be another explanation? Some scholars suggest the footprints were part of a ritual, perhaps walked upon by priests enacting the presence of the divine. In ancient Mesopotamia and surrounding cultures, kings and priests would often take on the role of the god in ceremony, donning regalia, performing sacred reenactments, invoking cosmic order through embodied ritual. Were the footprints a theatrical cue, marking the literal path of the divine? Yet the precision of the carving and its scale invites other questions. The footprints are not clumsy or abstract. They are detailed, complete with toes and arches. They seem, unmistakably, to have been carved to suggest a specific, deliberate motion. One step at the threshold, another within. But to whom did these steps belong? Some point to the tradition of divine footprints found across cultures. From the Buddha's impressions in stone, to Hindu temples in India where Vishnu's feet are honored, to even the Christian practice of tracing Christ's footprints during pilgrimages, the idea of deific presence marked by physical steps is ancient and widespread. In this context, the Ayandara footprints could be part of a religious language spoken through symbols carved in stone, a language that communicates awe, reverence, and the enduring idea that the gods once walked among us. But more speculative voices ask if the footprints point to something beyond symbol. Could they represent a cultural memory, an echo of a time when giants or gods were not metaphor, but reality? Such ideas, while outside the mainstream, persist in mythologies around the world. Stories of great beings, taller than men, ruling or walking among early civilizations. From the Nephilim of the Hebrew Bible to the Anunnaki of Sumerian myth, tales of giant progenitors are deeply embedded in the narrative fabric of ancient peoples. Are the Ayandara footprints a carved expression of those stories, a monument to memory, true or mythologized, of beings who once towered over humankind? Or are they an artistic flourish, a creative attempt to materialize belief and bring abstract divinity into physical form? Today, much of Ayandara lies in ruin. In 2018, the site was heavily damaged by an airstrike during regional conflict, another loss to the already fragile remnants of human heritage. Yet the images of the temple and its carvings endure, preserved in photographs and records, the footprints frozen in time even as the stone around them crumbles. What remains is the enduring silence of the mystery. Who carved the footprints? Who walked the sacred path between the threshold and the holy inner chamber? What god, real or imagined, did the people of Ayandara believe had come among them? The temple does not answer. It only offers symbols, shadows of belief etched in stone. And as we stand, centuries later, at the imagined entrance of that ancient sanctuary, we too might ask, were these the footprints of gods? Or are they simply humanity's most ancient longing, shaped in stone? Our desire to feel, just once, that we are not alone. High in the granite hills of South Africa's Mpumalanga province, where weathered rock meets sky and time seems to move slowly, there lies a single indentation carved deep into stone. At first glance, it might be mistaken for a natural depression, worn by wind and water. But step closer, and a different picture emerges. The shape is unmistakable. 5 rounded toes, a defined arch, a clear heel, a footprint. And not just any footprint. It measures over 4 feet long. If it is what it appears to be, it would belong to a human, or something human-like, standing over 20 feet tall. The locals call it simply the footprint of God. Etched into a vertical rock face, partially sheared off from the mountain, the print appears as if the being had stepped sideways into the stone itself. Geologists estimate the rock to be between 200 million and 3 billion years old, a type of granite that would have long since hardened before any hominid ever walked the earth. Yet there it is, a perfectly formed footprint in ancient stone. How can this be? Mainstream scientists explain such anomalies as pareidolia, a trick of the eye, where the human brain imposes familiar patterns onto irregular surfaces. Others suggest that the shape could be a natural erosion feature, a fluke of geology mimicking something recognizable. After all, the Earth has had billions of years to produce all manner of strange formations. But for many who visit the site, the impression feels too precise, too deliberate to dismiss. Could the stone have once been soft clay or sediment, briefly capable of recording a step before hardening into rock? And if so, who, or what, could have left a print of such massive scale? The mystery does not stand alone. Thousands of miles to the northeast, in India's Madhya Pradesh state, another giant footprint sits embedded in the rock. This one at the Padhar village temple site. Roughly the same length as the African print, it is accompanied by a second, partial footprint nearby. Local legend links it to the ancient Hindu epic Ramayana, in which the monkey god Hanuman is said to have leapt from this very place in his divine mission to find Sita. Devotees believe the impression is his footprint, preserved in stone by supernatural means. These kinds of footprints are not isolated. Similar claims appear across the globe, from Sri Lanka and Malaysia to the cliffs of Nevada and the highlands of Bolivia. Some are solitary, others come in pairs. A few are carved intentionally in religious contexts, but others, like the print in South Africa, remain unexplained, seemingly neither sculpted nor naturally formed, but something in between. Could these out-of-place footprints point to a lost history? Some fringe theorists propose that they are relics of giants, beings described in mythologies the world over. From the Nephilim of Genesis to the Titans of Greek lore, nearly every ancient culture tells stories of enormous beings who once walked the earth. Are these myths memories of real encounters, passed down through oral traditions and allegory? Alternatively, are the footprints evidence of a forgotten race, an earlier civilization with different proportions, erased from the historical record? There are even those who suggest extraterrestrial origins, interpreting the prints as traces of visitors whose size and weight left marks that no ordinary human could have created. While there is no scientific evidence to support such claims, the visual impact of the footprints continues to inspire wonder and speculation. Skeptics, of course, call for caution. Without datable material linked directly to the prints, without surrounding artifacts or confirmable geological analysis, it is impossible to know how old these impressions truly are, or if they are even footprints at all. Some geologists suggest that natural fracturing, erosion, and mineral deposits can mimic organic shapes in surprisingly accurate ways. Yet for those who have stood before these giant impressions, the questions persist. Why do so many of these alleged footprints share such strikingly human proportions? Why do they appear across so many continents and cultures? Are we merely seeing what we want to see, projecting myth into stone? Or are we glimpsing something that genuinely challenges our understanding of the past? Perhaps these footprints are not evidence in the scientific sense, but invitations, calls to look deeper, to listen to ancient voices echoed in geology and legend. They exist in that strange space between the physical and the symbolic, between hard stone and soft belief. Are they tricks of time and nature, the product of erosion, myth, or coincidence? Or are they markers left by something else, something ancient, something large, something that once walked the earth before us? The stones remain silent, but the footprints, impossibly large, impossibly human, continue to stir the imagination. And as the wind whistles across the granite of South Africa and incense drifts through the temple halls of India, one question lingers. Whose steps were these? And where did they lead? In the misty valleys and forested mountains of northern Japan, where the land still breathes with the rhythm of ancient seasons, curious relics from the deep past have been unearthed. Figurines, no larger than a child's forearm, with bodies that are strangely humanoid, yet distinctly otherworldly. Wide hips, spindly limbs, and most notably, enormous, exaggerated eyes dominate their appearance. Their forms are stylized, their expressions unreadable. They are known as doge, and they are among the most enigmatic artifacts of Japan's prehistoric Jomon period. The Jomon culture flourished between 14,000 and 300 BC, long before the rise of written language in Japan, and well before the archipelago was unified under imperial rule. It was a time of early villages, cord-marked pottery, and animistic beliefs deeply tied to nature. Amidst this backdrop, thousands of dog figurines were crafted from clay, each one unique, deliberate, and charged with mystery. They are not toys. They are not idols in the typical sense. Their appearance is too unusual, too symbolic. Most are female in form, with pronounced bellies, thighs, and breasts, traits often associated with fertility across ancient cultures. But the dog are more than fertility figures. Many are adorned with complex patterns and accessories, belts, goggles, armor-like plates. Some are missing limbs, intentionally damaged, perhaps ritually broken as part of ceremonial acts. Why did the Jomon people create them? Mainstream archaeological theories suggest that doge figurines were ritual objects, used in fertility rites, healing ceremonies, or shamanic practices. Their exaggerated features may have symbolized motherhood, spiritual transformation, or even illness or protection. Some were found buried in pits, as if sacrificed or offered to the earth. Others were uncovered in domestic settings, possibly serving as household talismans. Yet despite this, their true purpose remains speculative. Because the doge don't resemble typical ancient fertility figures, their faces are often mask-like or entirely alien. Their goggle eyes, especially on the so-called shakoki dog, the goggle-eyed type, have led some to suggest that they depict beings not of this world. The resemblance to modern depictions of astronauts, oversized eyes, helmets, and strange suits has not gone unnoticed. Could the dog represent mythic figures, deities, ancestors, or something else entirely? Some fringe researchers have proposed the idea that these figurines are evidence of ancient contact with extraterrestrial visitors, or perhaps with advanced beings from a lost civilization. In this interpretation, the strange adornments are not ritual costumes, but technology, spacesuits, breathing apparatuses, or protective gear. While this view lies far outside the mainstream, it reflects the undeniable fact that the dog do not conform to expectations. They feel deliberate, symbolic, and deeply charged with meaning. Yet their message is locked in silence, undeciphered by time. Why were they crafted in such great numbers, only to be broken and buried? Could they represent spiritual mediators, shamans in trance states, donning ceremonial garb to commune with spirits or gods? Or were they symbols of transformation, used in healing rites, or as substitutes for afflicted individuals, broken ceremonially to transfer illness or misfortune? Interestingly, their distribution is not uniform. Most have been found in northern Japan, particularly in the Tohoku region. And while some are abstract, others exhibit remarkable detail, intricate etchings, facial expressions, and ornamentation. The care with which they were made suggests they were more than common objects. No written records from the Jomon period survive to explain them. No myths, no instructions, no stories carved in stone. Only clay. Today, doge figurines are housed in museums across Japan. Some preserved whole, others pieced together from fragments. They are displayed with reverence, but also with uncertainty. They challenge our assumptions about prehistoric life, suggesting a complexity of thought, a depth of ritual and imagination that defies the label of primitive. Are they echoes of spiritual beliefs now lost? Artistic expressions of a worldview unlike our own? Or are they something more, clues to an ancient legacy of knowledge and symbolism we have yet to understand? We may never know. But the dog endure. They stare back at us with wide, expressionless eyes. They invite our questions, but offer no answers. Like so many ancient mysteries, they remind us that for all our progress, much of the human past remains hidden behind the veil of time, half revealed in clay, stone, and symbol. What were the dog meant to be? Messengers, mothers, mirrors of the unseen? Or are they simply what the Jomon people saw in their dreams, brought into form with fire and earth? As we search for meaning in their forms, bent limbs, flared hips, staring eyes, we must ask, are we interpreting them through our own lens, or failing to see them as they truly were? And what, if anything, still sleeps in the soil of Japan, waiting to offer another piece of the forgotten story? In the vast, silent reaches of Egypt's western desert, where the wind whispers across ochre sands and the sky stretches endless and untouched, there is a place where the bones of giants lie exposed beneath the sun. Here, in a desolate basin known as Wadi al-Hitan, the Valley of the Whales, stone and sand have conspired to preserve a mystery that speaks not of pyramids or pharaohs, but of oceans long vanished and creatures that no longer swim the seas. Scattered across the desert floor are the fossilized remains of ancient whales, some stretching nearly 60 feet in length. They lie in graceful arcs, as if still floating in currents that disappeared millions of years ago. Their vertebrae rise like half-buried ribs from the sand, their jaws gaping in perpetual silence. And what makes these bones so extraordinary is not only their age, but what they reveal. These are not the whales of today. They belong to species that lived more than 40 million years ago, during the Eocene epoch, when this part of the world was covered by a warm, shallow sea. The two most notable among them are Basilosaurus and Dorudon, early, now extinct ancestors of modern whales. But unlike modern whales, Basilosaurus still retained hind limbs, small, vestigial legs that protruded awkwardly from its body, useless for walking or swimming, but unmistakably present. What were they for? Some paleontologists believe these limbs played a role in mating or balance. Others see them as nothing more than evolutionary leftovers, a window into the transition of life from land to sea. But even with this explanation, the sight of these limbs, so small, so out of place, stirs deeper questions. Why did these ancient whales evolve in such a way? What caused them to trade land for water, legs for flukes? And why, in this barren, waterless desert, do their bones lie in such abundance? Over 400 skeletons have been unearthed in Wadi al-Hitan, making it one of the richest fossil sites of its kind in the world. Yet their preservation is so perfect, so undisturbed, that it feels almost as though they were arranged, positioned to be discovered in some distant future. Could this place have once been a sanctuary, a calving ground, or a mass death site? Or is there another reason why so many ancient whales came to rest here, their bones fossilized not just in stone, but in mystery? Mainstream science attributes the remarkable preservation to a combination of factors: the fine-grained sediments of the ancient seabed, rapid burial, and the arid conditions of the modern desert. But not all questions have been fully answered. Some researchers note the curious alignment of many of the skeletons, parallel, almost deliberate, oriented in similar directions. Is this a coincidence of currents, a relic of ancient tides, or does it suggest a behavioral pattern, an unknown habit of these long-extinct creatures? Others point to the fossilized remains of sea cows, sharks, and crocodiles found alongside the whales, suggesting a complex marine ecosystem. What kind of ocean was this that once teemed with such life? And what kind of transformation did the Earth undergo to leave these creatures stranded in the desert? For the indigenous people who lived near these lands in much more recent history, the bones were often misunderstood, believed to be the remnants of dragons or great serpents, their fossilized shapes too vast and too strange to belong to any creature known to man. Even today, some visitors report a sense of unease while walking among them. The dry air seems to carry whispers, and the desert floor, with its ancient cargo, feels more like a forgotten shore than solid ground. And then, there are the more speculative voices. Some suggest that Wadi al-Hitan might hold evidence of lost knowledge, echoes of civilizations or mythologies long forgotten. Could these whale fossils have inspired ancient legends, or were they once known to peoples who left no record of their understanding? Others point to anomalies in the fossils themselves, unusual wear patterns, unexplained markings, or formations that don't quite align with established theories. Could we be missing something fundamental? Some piece of the evolutionary puzzle not yet understood? And what of the desert itself? Egypt is no stranger to ancient mysteries, but Wadi al-Hitan feels different. Its silence is not the silence of monuments, but of prehistory, of a time when no human eyes beheld the land, when the earth spoke only in the language of shifting tides and slow extinction. It is a place where the boundary between past and present dissolves, where sand meets bone, and where science, mythology, and imagination converge. Declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2005, Wadi al-Hitan continues to draw scientists, explorers, and the curious. And yet, for all that has been discovered, the site seems to raise as many questions as it answers. Why do so many species appear to have converged here? What else might be buried beneath the desert, waiting to be revealed? And is the story of Wadi al-Hitan only a glimpse, one chapter in a much older and deeper narrative? As the sun sets across the desert and shadows stretch long over the fossil beds, the Valley of the Whales falls into quiet again. The wind carries the sound of nothing but shifting sand, but the bones remain, waiting. What story do they still hold? And are we truly ready to hear what they have to say? In the green heart of the English countryside, where rolling hills cradle ancient stones, and the air carries a quiet that feels older than memory, there rises a mound that seems too perfect, too symmetrical, to be natural. Silbury Hill, just outside the village of Avebury in Wiltshire, towers over the surrounding landscape, a colossal, grass-covered monument of chalk and clay, meticulously sculpted by human hands over 4,000 years ago. It is the largest prehistoric artificial mound in Europe, standing 120 feet high, with a base wider than the Egyptian pyramids. Yet, unlike the pyramids, Silbury Hill contains no burial chamber, no hidden tomb, no treasure sealed away in stone. In fact, it holds no confirmed purpose at all. Who built it, and why? Archaeological excavations, beginning in the 18th century and continuing into the modern era, have revealed much about how Silbury Hill was constructed, but remarkably little about why. Layer upon layer of chalk, turf, and soil were methodically piled, compacted, and shaped with astonishing precision. It is estimated that the mound took several generations to complete, with construction beginning around 2400 BC. And yet, after centuries of study, the true function of Silbury Hill remains elusive. There are no clear signs of habitation or defense. It is not aligned with any known burial site, nor does it appear to have been a platform for permanent structures. The interior of the hill is solid, built in stages, and filled with compacted material that shows no indication of hiding something at its core. Was it ceremonial, symbolic, an offering to the gods, or the earth itself. Silbury stands near one of the most complex and mysterious landscapes in prehistoric Britain. Just a short walk away lies the Avebury Stone Circle, older and larger than its more famous counterpart at Stonehenge. Further afield are long barrows, processional avenues, and ancient earthworks, all pointing to an area of profound spiritual or cultural importance. Could Silbury have been part of this larger sacred geography? Its height a kind of axis mundi, a meeting point between heaven and earth? Or was it a communal project, a unifying endeavor that bound early societies together in the shared labor of building something monumental? Some researchers point to the alignment of Silbury Hill with solar and lunar events. Others suggest the mound may have been used as a giant sundial or a platform for observing the sky. The summit would have offered a wide view of the surrounding plains, perhaps a vantage point for seasonal rituals or astronomical observations. But these theories, while compelling, remain unconfirmed. More speculative interpretations reach into the realms of folklore and the esoteric. Local legends tell of a buried king beneath the hill, mounted on a golden horse, waiting to rise again. In some versions, it is a druid high priest. In others, it is Merlin himself. These tales, though clearly mythological, suggest that even in later times, Silbury Hill was seen as more than earth and chalk. It was a threshold, a place of hidden power. Could the hill have marked a portal between worlds, a ritual gateway used by ancient priests, or shamans, or skywatchers? Some fringe theorists have even proposed that the hill was a kind of energy accumulator, a geospatial anchor in a forgotten grid of prehistoric knowledge. Though such ideas are far from accepted by mainstream archaeology, they reflect the enduring mystery of Silbury's scale, effort, and isolation. Why build something so immense with no clear function? What beliefs, what fears, what hopes compelled people to spend decades, perhaps centuries, shaping the land into this silent monument? There is something haunting about its presence. The way it rises gently, smoothly, out of the earth, as if it has always been there. As if it emerged, not through toil, but through intention. It commands attention, not through grandeur, but through stillness. Even today, standing at the base of the hill, there is a strange quiet. The grass rustles, the sky widens, and time seems to slow. One feels not just the passage of history, but the weight of mystery. A sense that something sacred once happened here, something now forgotten, but not erased. Silbury Hill is not a puzzle to be solved with a single answer. It is a question, layered, deliberate, and unresolved. A monument not to the known, but to the unknowable. What did it mean to those who built it? What did they see from its summit that we no longer can? Was it a beacon, a symbol, a gesture to the stars? Or is it, as some believe, a message left in earth and silence, waiting for us not to interpret, but simply to remember? And if so, what memory does it guard beneath its quiet, rising form? As the Anatolian sun casts long shadows over the ancient highlands of central Turkey, a pair of weathered stone lions silently watches over a path that has not been walked in millennia. Their eyes, worn smooth by time, still seem to guard something sacred. This is the Lion Gate of Hattusa, a portal to the once great capital of the Hittite Empire, carved into the very bones of the earth. Situated amid the rocky cliffs and plateaus near modern-day Boaz Kal, the ruins of Hattusa rise in quiet defiance of forgetfulness. The city once stood as a mighty power center, rivaling the Egyptian and Mesopotamian civilizations of the late Bronze Age. But of all its gates, the Lion Gate is perhaps the most enigmatic. Flanked by two massive lions carved from stone, the entrance forms a kind of silent threshold between the outer world and the sanctified interior of the city. The lions themselves are not merely decorative. They are powerful symbolic creatures in Hittite iconography. Yet their exact role, and the reason for their placement here, remains shrouded in uncertainty. Why were lions chosen to guard this gate? And what was the purpose of this imposing structure in a city that was otherwise fortified with walls and towers? In Hittite mythology, the lion represented more than power. It was a creature of the divine, associated with royalty, guardianship, and cosmic order. The lion was sacred to several deities, including the storm god Tarhunt, and may have been considered a spiritual protector against chaos and malevolent forces. But the gate itself is not aligned to any known celestial event. Its positioning appears to be symbolic, rather than astronomical. It does not face the solstice or equinox, nor does it align with the cardinal directions. It sits off-kilter, almost as though it was designed not to mark the passage of the sun, but to mark the passage of the soul. Could this be more than a defensive entrance? Was the Lion Gate a liminal space, a place of transformation, where one moved not just from outside to inside, but from profane to sacred? The careful craftsmanship of the lions supports this view. Their faces are expressive, stern, but not aggressive. Their mouths are closed, their postures watchful. They are neither snarling beasts nor docile pets. They are sentinels. And there is something about their placement, framing the entrance so precisely, that evokes the idea of guardians at a spiritual threshold. In many ancient cultures, lions served just such a role. From Mesopotamia to Mycenae, from Egypt to the Indus Valley, twin lions often flanked sacred gates, temple entrances, or tombs. Were the Hittites tapping into this shared symbolic language? Some scholars suggest that the Lion Gate marked the entry to a ceremonial or processional route, perhaps the start of a sacred journey taken by priests or kings. Others propose that the gate served a more esoteric function, a point where human and divine realms could intersect, where rituals were performed to maintain harmony between people and the gods. And then there are those who believe the gate was part of a broader ritual landscape, connected not just to city walls and buildings, but to natural features, hills, springs, and even the sky itself. Could the Lion Gate be one node in a forgotten grid of sacred geometry, encoded with meaning now lost? Hattusa was no ordinary city. Its vast size, complex temple districts, and carved rock sanctuaries suggest a culture deeply immersed in cosmology and ritual. Thousands of clay tablets recovered from the site describe detailed ceremonies, offerings, and divine instructions. But nowhere in those records is there a clear explanation for the lions. Why these beasts? Why here? In the absence of written answers, more speculative interpretations have emerged. Some theorists have proposed that the lions represent not animals, but guardians of energy, a symbolic control point in an ancient system of earth energies, or ley lines. While this idea lies outside academic consensus, it speaks to the sense of purpose the gate seems to radiate. Others note the similarities between the Hattusa lions and those found in other ancient sites, suggesting cultural diffusion, or even the remnants of a long-forgotten, pre-Hittite tradition. Were the Hittites inheriting symbols they themselves did not fully understand, repurposing them for their own cosmology? One intriguing detail adds to the mystery. Other gates in Hattusa, like the King's Gate or the Sphinx Gate, also bear symbolic figures. Each may have marked a specific type of transition, political, spiritual, or ceremonial. Did the Lion Gate guard something particular? A sacred path? A restricted precinct? Or something we can no longer see? What is certain is this: the Lion Gate was built to last. The stones are massive, precisely carved and carefully fitted. The lions themselves are worn, but not broken. Their gaze, though blind with age, still seems to search across the ruined city, across the centuries. Visitors who stand between them today often describe a strange sensation, a quiet wait, a moment of pause, as if entering not a ruin, but a memory. The gate feels alive somehow, like a question posed in stone, still waiting for an answer. Why did the Hittites build this gate with such intention? What passed beneath these lions in the days when Hattusa ruled and the gods spoke in thunder? And what sacred knowledge might have been sealed here between the jaws of stone? In the gentle hills of Oxfordshire, England, where green fields ripple under shifting clouds and ancient pathways trace the contours of forgotten times, there lies a figure carved into the land itself. At first, it's almost invisible, just a curve of chalk beneath the grass. But from above, the image becomes clear and unmistakably strange. The Uffington White Horse, over 360 feet long and etched into the chalk of a rolling hillside, is not just a symbol. It is a question, bold and enduring, standing across millennia. With a body stretched like calligraphy and a stylized head formed from simple, elegant lines, the figure doesn't resemble a realistic horse. Instead, it resembles movement, speed, grace, intention. It's abstract, almost modern in design, more like a glyph or a signature than a depiction of a living animal. But who carved it? And why? Radiocarbon dating of soil samples taken from the figure's trenches suggests it was created between 1380 and 550 BC, placing its origins firmly in the Late Bronze Age or Early Iron Age. That makes it the oldest known hill figure in Britain, and likely in the world. Yet despite its age, the image remains intact, thanks to centuries of careful maintenance by the people who live nearby. Generation after generation has returned to the hill to clear away encroaching grass and soil, to re-expose the gleaming white chalk beneath. This act, known as scouring, has been carried out for more than 1,000 years. Why such devotion? What has kept this figure alive in the minds and hearts of those who dwell in its shadow? Mainstream historians propose several possibilities. One theory holds that the figure was a tribal emblem, a territorial marker for an early Celtic people, visible from miles around and signifying dominance over the valley below. Others believe it may have been a sacred symbol, perhaps tied to a solar cult or a deity associated with horses, such as Epona, or the later Celtic god Rhiannon. Its abstract, almost otherworldly form supports this idea. It does not look like a literal horse. It looks like an icon, a spirit. Still, others suggest it may have served a ritual purpose, perhaps a location for ceremonies marking the solstices or equinoxes. The hill on which the White Horse stands offers expansive views in all directions, and nearby lie ancient sites of significance. The Ridgeway, one of the oldest roads in Europe. Wayland's Smithy, a Neolithic long barrow tied to folklore. And Dragon Hill, a bare chalk mound where legend says St. George slew the dragon. George slew the dragon. Could all of these sites be connected? Was this landscape once a sacred geography, mapped out not with cities or walls, but with symbols, spirits, and meaning? The placement of the White Horse suggests careful thought. It is not simply scratched onto a slope. It is sited where the hillside dips away steeply, giving the figure an illusion of animation. When viewed from a distance, especially during certain angles of light, it appears to move. A white blur galloping across the land. Is this intentional? Was the figure designed not just to be seen, but to perform, to animate the hillside, to give life to the landscape itself? Speculative interpretations abound. Some fringe theorists have suggested that the White Horse is not a horse at all, but a dragon or a mythical beast. Others believe it encodes astronomical information, a constellation made visible on Earth or a map to the stars. Still others point to its resemblance to symbols found in ancient Indo-European cultures, suggesting a shared mythic origin lost to time. And then, there is the possibility that it represents something we cannot yet name. A belief system, a cultural expression, a spiritual code no longer understood. If so, then the white horse is more than an artwork or symbol. It is a remnant of a vanished way of seeing the world. What did the people who carved it believe? Were they calling to the sky, marking the land, or simply honoring something they could no longer see but still felt? A force, a presence, a memory? We know so little. No written records remain from its creators. No artifacts or inscriptions lie beneath its lines. All that has survived is the shape and the enduring impulse to preserve it. Perhaps that is the greatest mystery of all. Why, after thousands of years, do people still come to tend it? What compels a community, century after century, to dig into the hillside, to scrape away the grass and expose the chalk beneath, to keep the figure visible to the sky? Is it respect, tradition, or something deeper, an inherited intuition that the figure still matters? The Uffington White Horse offers no answers. It does not proclaim. It does not explain. It only endures, cut into the land, gleaming against the green, like a whisper from another time. Is it a message, a marker, or simply a reminder that the earth too can remember? And as the wind moves across the high ridges of southern England, and the chalk glows faintly beneath the stars, one question lingers. What else lies hidden in the hills, waiting to be seen? Not just with the eyes, but with the imagination.
you.